have Marius in Alabama who's calling in to tell me that they disagree with my interpretation of Exodus 21. So, sorry, Paul, we're going to slavery right away.
Sounds great.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air. What about my interpretation do you disagree with? Because I pretty much just read it verbatim.
Well, Matt, I've heard you argue your point several times, and in my opinion, every time you've been wrong, because you have stated that the Bible endorses slavery and God endorses slavery, and you are absolutely incorrect. You have to take into consideration that you are reading that verse out of context.
No, sir.
That you have a misunderstanding.
No, sir.
Of what the text is implying.
No, sir, I do not. So what is my misunderstanding of Exodus 21?
You're saying that Exodus 21 is saying that, God tells the Israelites that they are allowed to have slaves.
Well, I don't think there is a God, so I don't think there's a God talking. But what I've said is the Bible in Exodus 21 explicitly permits slavery.
And I think that, okay, so when you say slavery, define slavery.
Owning another human being as property.
Jesus is Lord and he's coming back. I'm back. No, Matt Dillahunty. That is not a definition of slavery or slave. Perhaps it's more of a colloquial definition, but it's certainly not a legal definition, meaning that you could not take someone to court and say, Judge or Your Honor, this person owned me as property. Therefore, arrest him. Therefore, prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. So it's not a legal definition, but colloquially or commonly, we would use the word without defining it legally. We would say this person is a slave, understanding both receptor, the one that's receiving the language, and the one that's giving it, both understanding that this person is there against their will. So there's no need to state it in the definition of the word slave. So most definitions of slave that you find are not legal definitions. They're more defining the word with it already being understood that this person has no free will, that they have no volition in the matter. So you're owning another person as property against their will. But the against their will part is often left out of the definition because that is understood. No one would want to be owned as property on their own free will. So it's understood without saying that they are basically a slave and they're against their will. But legally, if you wanted to prove in the court of law that this person is guilty of enslaving or slavery or slave trafficking, you have to prove that the individuals were there against their will, or that there's somehow there's some compulsion for them to be there. We kidnapped your son. If you don't come over to this lot and work for 6 months, you're not going to see your son again. Okay, so you have to be able to prove that. You can't just say owning another person is slavery. That's not the legal definition of slavery, meaning you could not persecute someone under the law if they actually wanted to be in that position in the first place. Okay, what is a slave? This is Black Law's dictionary. Look up the legal definition. We don't care what your opinion of the Bible is. We want to know if it would be illegal to do what they were doing in the Old Testament today. That's what we'd like to know. Would that be considered illegal? Would that person be prosecuted under our law? In order for you to judge the Bible to be immoral, you have to demonstrate that the Bible, according to your law, American jurisprudence, would be, or someone practicing this would be violating the law, your law. If you're going to, in the 21st century, accuse the ancient Near East and the Israelites of slavery, All right, and that's part of my slavery challenge that still hasn't been met. Pine Creek has tried and failed. He's the only one that's tried and failed. Well, many have, but he's the only one that I actually have a video on it. You can go check that out. Pine Creek Answers My Slavery Challenge, where he admits, look, I can't demonstrate in the Bible that that slavery exists, other than in the case of war and prisoners, of course. What is a slave according to Black's Law Dictionary? It's a person who is wholly subject to the will of another. Most definitions of slavery, including the one that Matt Dillahunty gave you, leave that part out, but you need that part for legal purposes. You cannot arrest anyone or consider anyone to be immoral, and immoral to an atheist is breaking the law of their land, right? Breaking the law of their land, right? So you need that piece. You cannot just go through the Bible. Oh, look at me. I'm going through the Bible looking for slavery. Oh, there's slavery. And suggest that that event is there against his or her will. In order to arrest the slave master, regardless of what you call them, what label you place on them, you have to demonstrate that the person that they have in their home or on their land is there against their will. It's that simple. That's just that simple. One who has no freedom of action, but whose person and services are wholly under the control of another. So it's their person and their services. In the Old Testament, you would contract your services to another. You would willingly say, I can work, my carpentry is my skill, masonry, whatever the case may be. And I will work to pay off the debt. I will work to actually, in one case, remember Joseph worked to have the daughter's hand in marriage, Laban's daughter. He wanted to marry his daughter. So he said, I'll work for you for 7 years, right? You must prove that the person and the services are under the control of another, and that that person is wholly subject to the will, and they have no freedom of action. They have no freedom of action. So we dealt with that. Here's another definition. We dealt with that canard, that tired old canard Matt Dillahunty loves to use on unsuspected Christians nationwide. We dealt with that in another video where he asked the question, when is it okay to be a slave, or when is it okay to ever own another person? To ever own another person. That was Webster's definition of slavery, which is more of a legal definition. Okay. If you're judging someone, you must be able to provide a legal definition. Matt Dillahunty is trying to judge the Bible. So he must define slavery and based on a legal definition of slavery if he's going to judge people of slavery. So when is it okay to ever own another person? When that person wants to be owned, very simply.
My interpretation is that the Bible is talking about indentured servitude.
No. I get that you think that, and that's because that's what somebody taught you.
Well, who taught you what you believe about that passage? Somebody. So somebody taught him and somebody taught you. So you haven't moved the proverbial ball forward. I know it sounds good for your audience, but you haven't moved the proverbial ball forward by saying because someone taught you that. I'm just saying. I know it's not really important, but just saying, Matt. There's a reason why Mr. Matt Dillahunty doesn't allow me on his show.
But have you actually read the Bible?
Okay. All right. So now so the guy gave a decent answer, which is you're ignoring the distinction between a voluntary and an involuntary act, one being legal and one being illegal. It would not be illegal in the United States to own another person as property. Now we have to unpack what ownership and property mean. Ultimately, ownership and property means whatever the two have agreed that it should mean. Because the contract is voluntary, so the stipulations are also expressed in the contract are also voluntary. So ownership and property in purchasing means whatever the two parties agree that it means, not what you want it to mean today, 400 years from now, or 300 years ago. It means purchasing and property and ownership. It means whatever the two parties agreed upon it meaning. Words are not univocal, they're equivocal. They take on the context in which they are used, in which the context allows them to be defined. So if I define purchasing and ownership as merely what you would have in a NBA contract, owner is purchasing the contract of a certain player. If I define it that way, then that's the definition that I agreed to. There is no breaking of the law. There's no violation of the law. So you can't come and say, "Oh, I'm going to arrest you for slavery." Well, I wanted to be here. You would be violating my rights. You would be guilty of kidnapping me from taking me from where I want to be and placing me somewhere else in a jail somewhere for being a slave. You probably come arrest my master, right? But you would be violating my rights. You'd be violating my Eved's rights because my Eved wanted to be there. He actually came and asked for this position.
Do you realize that it specifically says that you can own people and they are your property, which you can pass on to your children?
Okay. Has he proven? So you see how he pivoted. The guy had him in the corner and he allowed him to pivot. I wouldn't have allowed him to pivot to um, owning as property. You haven't dealt with, Matt, the man's response. The man's response was that these people wanted to be there, therefore they wanted to be owned as property. You haven't dealt with that. Instead, you're trying to gaslight the audience. Well, the audience is already gaslighted. You're gaslighting and you're suggesting that if I just say these terms and I just throw these arbitrary terms out, like purchasing, owning, and buying, that people are going to automatically assume that it must be against the will of the slave. When is it okay to purchase another person? You have to go through the whole entire gamut because they'll do what Matt Dillahunty just did and start bringing up other terms that have to be defined. That if they're left undefined, the reader is going to, the hearer is going to fill in the blanks, to so to say. And usually they'll fill in the blanks with any legal type of purchasing or purchasing against the volition of the one that's being purchased, right? That's what your mind will automatically default to, which is why the definition of slavery in our modern world never doesn't even include volition. You have to go to a legal definition to get that, because it's assumed that there's no volition involved here if the person is being purchased, right? But when they use these terms, you have to deal with the terminology they're using. Make them define their terms. What do you mean by purchased? Does the person want to be purchased? He just ignored the man's answer. The man gave a great answer. He didn't. He was correct. Matt Dillahunty was wrong because he didn't deal with that distinction between a voluntary and involuntary action. This is not rocket science. This guy is not as smart as most atheists make him out to be. If he would have only allowed me on his show, I'm going to open up the room. If he would only allow me on, this entire ruse would be destroyed in a matter of seconds. If he would only allow me on the show. But I'm a sexist because I wouldn't talk to the woman on the panel. I wouldn't acknowledge her, some feminazi that was on there. So, so he called me a sexist, and then he banned me from the show. And that was his handler, by the way. It was his handler or his call screener, not Matt. I didn't get a chance to speak to Matt directly, but I called in and said, "Can I speak to Matt?" And the guy mentioned that there was another host, a female host. I said, "Okay, fine." And I think he knew who I was, so that's why he brought up the female host. Because when beta male liberals don't want to debate you, when they don't want to debate Jill, they bring in a female moderator. Yeah, that's what they do now. They're bringing a female moderator when they don't want to debate me, and they figure, oh, he's not going to debate because there's a female here. So when is it okay? A brand tried that trick too, right? It sort of backfired on him. But when is it okay to own another person when they want to be owned? So we dealt with that ruse. Now Matt Dillahunty has. Now I don't know if this is something that he's done recently or if this is something he has always been doing. I'm just not realizing, perhaps. But he has a new rules, and it has to deal with uh, Exodus 21. And basically, he will ask, "Would you be my slave according to Exodus 21?" Would you be my slave according to Exodus 21? Um, my answer to that question is a resounding no. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why. It's not no for the reason that you atheists might think I'm saying no. But that's the rules. The trick is that if you say yes, it's okay to be my slave, or I would be your slave, then you're acknowledging that the Bible condones slavery. If you say no, then you're acknowledging that what the Bible did, you're still acknowledging that the Bible condones slavery, but you're also acknowledging that what the Bible did was immoral because you wouldn't be a slave to Matt Dillahunty. So it's a bit of a ruse or a trick, or he thinks he's being clever, but he's really not. Because again, this entire ruse hangs on the notion that the slave is here against his will. And you saw in the first clip that Matt didn't even want to deal with the volition of the matter, whether or not the slave was there willingly or not. He wanted to jump to, well, that they can be purchased. Well, again, if I want to be purchased, then who are you to tell me that I can't be?
Ryan, would you be my slave under the rules established in Exodus 21?
By the way, he voted for Biden.
If I could be, see, you keep saying slave, but it doesn't say slave; it says servant.
Oh my God!
If I was
Ryan, would you be my servant under the rules of Exodus? No, shut up. Would you be my servant under the rules of Exodus 21?
Matt, I hope you're watching. Since you won't allow me on your show, I'll answer it here. If you were Abraham, yes. But because you're not Abraham, no. If you had more for me to inherit than your YouTube channel or your atheist experience show, which I don't want, then perhaps. Okay, did you catch that? The answer is no, because you do not have any property that I know about. Certainly was not proper. Your property was not as expansive or as vast as Abraham's or Job's in the scriptures, who would be considered billionaires by today's standards. Because you don't have that type of pedigree or estate, I would say no to you, and I would look for someone like Abraham to be their evet. Because in biblical times, if there were no heir, if there were no son, if Abraham did not have Isaac, then it was understood as tradition, part of tradition, that the heir to your home, the heir to your estate, would be your Eved, your male Eved, your male Eved. Eleazar of Damascus, Eleazar of Damascus, Matt Dillahunty, meaning he was not an Israelite. Matt Dillahunty, meaning he was not from in the land of Abraham, we could say, or he was not part of Abraham's lineage. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We know the Israelites came later, but Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? That's the father of many nations, Abraham. Okay, God's man. He was not a part of the family. Yet, the word of the Lord came to Abram. This is before God changed his name to Abraham. Do not fear, Abram. I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be very great. What does Abram say? What are you talking about? I don't even have a son to pass down my wealth. I don't have any heir. I don't have an heir to the throne. Well, he wasn't a king, but I don't have someone to pass down my estate to, which was the tradition. Then what is interestingly enough, what does Abram say? Meaning he was not saying, "Oh, I'm going to be generous." Some the atheists try to get around this. "Well, I'm going to be generous and give my estate." No, he was saying that, look, if you don't, God, give me an heir to my house, then it's going to be Eleazar to be the one who inherits everything. Since I am childless, and the heir of my house, therefore, is Eleazar of Damascus. Since you have given me no offspring, blaming God, you have given me no offspring. The one born in my house, Eleazar, his Aved or slave, is my heir. So, Matt, the answer is no, because all you have in your house is your YouTube channel.
It's a bad idea. Don't do it. Why does this take even half a fucking second? This is the embarrassing thing. I'm gonna let you go, Ryan. I've already hung up.
That's who's embarrassing. You
because
are.
I want you to go and think about this. I'm not joking when I talk about how much this breaks my fucking heart to watch the poison that religion has imbued people with to the point where they will bend over backwards and hem and haw about the easiest question I could ask. Are people property? Can you beat them? Would you be my slave, my servant, if you want to pedantically? It wasn't written in English anyway. Under what Exodus 21 says.
Yeah, and if you would allow a Christian to come on your show, that's more of the apologist type instead of a bunch of, no offense to the young man, but he did a great job, the young man before this, where he brought up the voluntary, involuntary distinction, which liberal scholars hate when you bring up, like Dr. Josh, because it destroys their entire narrative, false narrative, right? So he did a great job, and this person he just hung up on. so now he's going off on this rant here. Eleazar was a servant, not a slave. What's the difference? Kiki, what's the difference? Oh, Kiki wants to come in. Let's let Kiki come in the room and tell us what the difference is between a slave and a servant. So here's the link, Kiki. Kiki's going to defeat himself he defeated his own argument without even realizing. Matt Dillahunty doesn't know the difference between a servant and a slave. Neither do you. Kiki, what's the difference between a slave and a servant?
All right, the difference here, and it specifies in the Bible, a servant, you're able, you have that choice. A slave, you don't have that choice.
Okay.
You have the choice to be a servant. You don't have the choice to be a slave.
Okay, where does it say that in the Bible that you don't have a choice?
Give me a second.
The same word that is used here to
Let me
describe.
ask you though. In that
Yeah,
same Genesis book that you just read there, it's when it refers to Elijah, it refers to him as a servant. But then when
Genesis
it
15.
refers
Yeah.
to the Hebrew itself, when they became enslaved in Egypt, it used a slave instead of a servant.
It used the slave instead of a servant. Okay.
Yes, instead of the word
Uh,
servant, it
so
used the
what's the
word slave.
difference? So the difference between a slave and a servant is that one is there against their will, and the other one is there because they want to be there.
They are willing to serve, but they're not. They're not abused like slaves are.
Uh, okay, now they're abused. Okay, so
Servants
they're
are not abused like slaves are abused.
servants can't
They
be
are not.
abused, or they can be abused. So you're saying that slaves can be abused if
I
the
mean,
slave master wants to
based on
abuse them?
the laws in the Bible, they can be abused.
Okay, so all right, let's not go too far into a rabbit hole. The difference between
Wait.
an eved,
But you're asking me, can slave be abused? And
no,
I'm
they
telling you,
cannot. No.
then why are there laws and regulations
Okay,
saying
we'll
how we
get
can
to that.
abuse a
We'll
slave?
get to that. Let's stay where we are. You're saying that the difference between a slave and a servant is that one is there against their will, right? And then one is there because they want to be there, correct?
Yes, there's a
Okay.
contract, that social
Okay.
contract.
An agreement between two parties.
Yes.
Okay. So now you would need to demonstrate that the servant or the eved, since the word there could they use the same word basically to describe to two different as I would agree, those are two different positions. One is voluntary and one is involuntary. I think that is the line that we need to draw, the line of demarcation between a slave and a servant. So now you need to demonstrate that anyone in the Bible is there because they're called an eved, is there against their will. Can you demonstrate that anyone in the Bible is there against their will and working because they were forced to work?
How about when Josiah captured all those Canaanite cities? He enslaved
Okay.
them. They weren't willingly
All
servants.
all right. So now here's where my biblical challenge, my slavery challenge comes to, which gets into the minutia, which gets into the detail and doesn't allow you to do what Dr. Josh did in an actual debate, a liberal scholar with a PhD, and try to obfuscate on the word or on the context and bring up war. When war in battle, the rules are different. The rules of engagement are different. You are to capture people in battle,
No. You don't
even
have
today.
to capture people. You
Okay,
don't have to
so
capture people.
yes, you do, and
No,
I'll
you
show
do not.
you. And I'll show you in the Geneva Convention where you must capture. You must,
Capture
according
as
to the
prisoner
Geneva
of war,
Convention.
not slaves.
Okay,
There's a
okay,
difference
we'll
between
see about
prisoner of
that.
war
We'll
and
we'll see.
slavery.
We'll see about that. We'll see about that. But here's my biblical challenge.
All right, no.
The
Bring
Hebrews.
up the Geneva. Since you brought it up, read to me that
Sure, yeah.
word
Let
in
me
Geneva
give my
Convention.
challenge first and lay it out there for you, so that you don't straw man or obfuscate or not understand where I'm coming from, my actual argument. The Hebrews used slavery to denote both voluntary and involuntary servants. They used the word slavery. There were all different types of words that they used, but you're right. The distinction we need to draw is if the person is there voluntary or involuntary. All right. But they would still use the same word to describe both involuntary and voluntary
Can you
servants.
show me the passage that does that? How about that? How about the
Yeah,
passage?
sure. The only scenarios in which involuntary service would be sanctioned are in scenarios in which we would sanction involuntary servitude We would more likely confine because we gone away from the chain gangs, but you are still a ward of the state. And if you were forced to work, it would be in some form of community service to lessen your sentence. Okay, so that's the only time we sanction quote unquote slavery, according to the 14th Amendment. Prisoners, POWs, criminals, and also people who are in debt, especially to the IRS, you can be jailed. All right. So to go to a passage like Deuteronomy 20, Dr. Josh, is disingenuous because today we still, which by the way begins by saying when you go to war, there are scenarios like when you go to war today where you can capture and you can keep people against their will, which in any other circumstance or in a civil context would be considered kidnapping. Okay, therefore, biblical slavery, when defining the word slavery as we would today, does not exist. The challenge is for the skeptic to
There,
prove
there is.
involuntary servitude in scenarios in which we do not confine or enforce servitude on another involuntarily today. You, sir, just cited uh, uh, a example of when we would today involuntarily serve or confine someone, a prisoner or someone who's an enemy combatant. Can you find in the scriptures, other than in those scenarios, in which people are forced to work against their will? Go ahead.
Before we move on, we have to clarify this real quick because
Uh,
nowadays you cannot force your prisoner of war to work labor for you. That's not
oh, you
part.
can't?
You cannot.
Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Um, I'm not sure about that,
All
but
right. Let's look up. You since you mentioned Geneva Convention and prisoner of war. Let's look at that then.
okay. They have survived the war. They may be grandmothers, they may be widows. The men would have, of course, fought. Even boys would fight 14, 15, and some of these foreign lands. So your job was to capture them. In fact, if you did not capture these survivors and you left them there, it would be considered a violation of Geneva. So if you're going to go to war, again, if you're going to go to war, Kiki, then I can appeal to the statutes and the rules of engagement when we go to war today. That's a fair comparison, not comparing what the Israelites did during wartime to what we do during peacetime. That is disingenuous. It is
Yes. And
dishonest. It is wicked.
when war is over,
Okay.
when war is over, prisoner of wars are returned. That's
Oh,
not
really?
the
Is
case
that right?
here. Yes. And when a
Okay.
war is over,
So do you understand what this is saying here? Is this clear? Are we allowed to capture people during war? You concede, and now you want to go to what happens after the war.
I mean,
Nice
there's a
pivot. Nice
difference
pivot.
between prisoner of war and enslaving them
Okay.
till they die.
All right. So what happens to the people? Are they captured?
Yes, but you return
Okay.
them when the war is
All right.
over. You don't
Okay.
keep
So
them until they
all
die.
right. We'll get to what happens when the war is over and treaties and such and so forth. We'll get to that until they die.
Yes, yes. Because when you
Okay. Let me
capture them
just show
as
you
slave, you keep them until they die as your property.
until they
As
die. If they
prisoner
want to
of
be
war,
kept.
you
If
don't
they
keep
want to
them
be
till they
kept. Yeah.
die. You keep them until the war's over,
And if they want to
or
be kept. Yeah.
until you can establish a some type of treaty between the other nation. That's the
Here
purpose
we
of a
go.
prisoner
Here
of
we
war.
go. Now we're getting it. Now we're starting to think. It depends on Kiki, the treaty that was made between your leader and the leader of the country that just kicked your butt. Because if the treaty says that you're going to be in the vet or you're going to be a slave to the allied powers, meaning everything you make and your production is going to go to another country, not your country, guess what, genius?
Guess what, genius? The treaty is to return the prisoner of war.
Guess what, genius? So here you go. Here are the major provisions of Versailles, which was the treaty after World War I. Okay, So you're right in that the prisoners are returned, but when they return, they go to work, and who do they work for? They work for the country that you just lost the war to. It's called war guilt. Okay, so
Oh,
here
that's
are the
no, we
provisions.
don't use war guilt anymore. You know
Oh, we
why we
don't?
use war guilt anymore? Because of World War One. After
Oh,
World War
because of
One, we stopped
we
war guilt.
stopped doing this.
Yes, yes. I
So
study war. I
uh,
know about war.
uh-huh.
That
So
is part of my
this
profession.
was only good up until World War One. I'm glad you admit that. I'm glad you admit that. So in biblical times, because we have sanctions, we have other ways
Yeah,
of
that's funny.
punishing, because we have more
God follows human nature, human culture. That is really
be,
funny.
because we have because no, they actually followed the Bible.
Oh,
Because we
that's
have
funny.
more
The
because
Bible, the Bi-
we have
that's why
more
the Bible has. That's why the Bible reflects the evolution of human culture. That's funny.
no. The
The
human
Bible
culture
reflects
reflects
the
the
evolution
Bible.
of human
Human
culture.
culture follows the Bible, or try to at least. So here we have World War One, and now we have, instead of calling it war guilt, we just rephrased it in the form of sanctions. So we have more sophisticated ways of punishing countries that are aggressive, that take and pillage from other countries. And now who's going to pay? The person who did the pillaging is going to pay. What does that mean? That means that the government that did the pillaging and its citizens will pay. And how do they pay? Reparations.
We
How
don't
does
use
reparations
reparations
get paid?
anymore.
By
Reparations are
working.
now
How does
reparations are not
reparations
done
get
anymore.
paid? How does reparations get paid? By someone working for someone else.
That's
And
not how reparations work.
the German people, reparations means repairing or paying back the damages that your country has done. The German people paid reparations in the tune of $33 billion over 30 years to the Allied powers, sir.
You know how much was actually paid? Significantly less
Oh,
than
what
that
was
33
actually paid?
billion.
That was the term of the agreement. And whether or not the actual agreement was held to or met is irrelevant. The agreement was you must pay. And that means that your citizens technically work for us until the debt is paid in full. It's a more sophisticated form of spoils of war, if you will, but it
It
nevertheless
is
is the
extremely
same
funny how much
concept. Same
mental
concept.
you have
Welcome,
to go
Slim
through
Jim.
to defend your morally bankrupt book here.
Okay, well, so is this is morally bankrupt according to you. That's why we changed it.
Again, we don't
Is war
use
guilt morally bankrupt? What do you think, Slim
reparation
Jim?
anymore.
We
After
don't.
we
After
fell
World War
out of World
One,
War
sir.
One,
That's
we
30,
don't
40.
use war
That's
reparation
what?
anymore.
That's 100 years ago. So you
Yes,
just now became a moral state 100 years ago.
again,
But you're going to judge the
our
Bible
society
because they were
evolved.
doing something in
Our
the ancient. Come
society
on, man.
evolved. We get better
Uh,
and better as we
oh,
go.
we get better and better and better. Yeah. So we changed war guilt to we use another term, and we just call it sanctions, and all of a sudden now we're more moral because we don't call it war guilt. We don't call it war brides anymore. We just call it, well, we just got married to someone from another country,
Yes, and
because
sanctions don't
war
require those
brides
countries to
sounds,
pay you.
it doesn't sound politically
And
correct. It
sanctions do
sounds
not require those
it it,
countries to pay you.
it sounds like you're
It's
exploiting
better
these
than
people.
forcing someone to work for free
You
as
haven't
slaves
proven
and you
that.
can abuse them.
You haven't proven that. You haven't proven anyone in the Bible was forced. That's your assumption.
We just
Slim Jim.
agreed. We just agreed
Mm.
that when Josiah captured those country, he took those people as slaves.
And that's during war, sir. That's during war. If you have to go to war, which again I've already demonstrated. Oh, and you mentioned that Hebrews, or you mentioned rather that people weren't allowed to work. You weren't allowed to make the POWs work. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, well, let me show you Geneva. Welcome, Slim Jim.
Hello.
I guess Geneva doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're immoral as well. Articles 7 and 8. This is the evacuation of prisoners of war. Prisoners should be evacuated from the combat zone. They didn't make a must, but you should. In the scriptures, you must evacuate because it was to protect them from barbarians who are roaming the countryside looking for women and children to pillage.
You said article
after
what? What article in Geneva Convention?
This is Articles 7 and 8.
I'm reading Article 7 around. A prisoner of war may in no circumstance renounce in part or entirety the right secured to them by the present convention and by the special agreement referred to in the foregoing article.
Yeah,
That's
basically
that's literally from the.
Okay, let me. I don't know what you're reading from, but let me read. It says that prisoners should be evacuated from combat zone within the shortest period of time.
Which article was that again?
Okay, this is Articles 7 and 8 of Geneva 4, I believe. So, should prisoners be evacuated?
Show me.
Should prisoners be evacuated, Kiki? Yes or no? According to Geneva.
Can I share something? Can I share something?
Well, let me ask you about this first, and then you can share what you want to share.
There's a difference difference between a prisoner of war and capturing them and turning them.
Well, we already talked about capturing non-combatants. They are to be captured also, not for exploitation purposes, but to protect them.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Okay, let's deal with this.
No. The Geneva Convention does not stipulate.
I just posted it. Let me put it back.
We must capture non-combatants.
Okay, let me show you where it says that.
Capture means something very specific.
Okay, let me show you where it says capture again, because obviously you missed it, Slim, because you weren't here, and you're someone that says they were in the army. I'm starting not to believe you. So Geneva, here it is again.
Why don't you use the actual Geneva Convention article?
Okay, that's fine. It's going to say the same thing. What should you do with the sick, the wounded, the aged, the children, the women who are pregnant? What should you do with them, Slim Jim?
So, belligerents have an obligation to evacuate non-combatants from the area. But the word that you used, capture, is a very specific term, which refers only to combatants or members of belligerent militaries.
So what should you do with the people
No.
who are sick?
No.
You can say capture if you want.
No, you cannot. No, you
Yes,
can't.
you can.
No,
yes,
legally, per the law of war, capture means something very specific.
Okay. What does capture mean? That's specific. What does it mean?
Capture only has to do with members of belligerent militaries.
What does capture mean then? Exactly what does it mean?
It means to take them prisoner.
Okay. Are these people taken prisoner?
No.
They're not.
No. They are evacuated from the battlefield.
Okay. How are they evacuated?
And afforded every reasonable opportunity.
And so are the prisoners.
Hang on. I'm not interrupting you.
How are
Jill,
they
captured? Jill, shut up and I will explain. But you've got to stop interrupting me.
Go ahead. How are they taken? Are they taken at gunpoint?
No, they're not.
They're not. So they say to these people.
You are not authorized.
They say to these people, "Come with me."
Jill.
Do they say to these people, "Come with me"?
No,
they don't. So the people just follow them.
If they want to,
they just follow them into the transport.
God damn it, Jill! Shut the fuck up.
They just okay. How about you go on Jay Pasik's channel and use your language of Satan? All right, your Pope didn't teach you how to speak like that, so don't speak like that on my channel. All right, so go ahead, Kiki.
You're given the opportunity to. You're not required to. You're given the opportunity to.
Okay.
There's a
so you're given the opportunity to go, and if you don't want to go, then you are what? Left there to die. Right?
Yes, but you don't capture like he's saying, because you only capture those who are combatant. Non-combatants follow a different.
Okay.
I'm sorry if you don't understand.
Okay.
Legal procedures here.
Okay. So
now let me read Article 7 and 8
Okay,
directly
go ahead
from
and
the
share what
Geneva
you have to
Convention
share.
for you real quick. Prisoner of war may in no circumstance renounce in part or in entirety the rights secured to them by the present convention and by the special agreement referred to in the foregoing article, if such be such there be. The present convention shall be applied with the corporation and under the scrutiny of the protecting power whose duty it is to safeguard the interests of the parties to the conflict. For this purpose, the protecting power may appoint, apart from their diplomatic or consular staff, delegates from amongst their own nations or the nationals of their neutral power. The said delegates shall be subjected to the approval of the power with which they are to carry out their duties. The parties to the conflict shall facilitate to the greatest extent possible the task of the representative or delegate of the protecting power. The representative of delegates of the protecting power shall not in any case exceed their mission under the present convention. They shall in particular take account of the imperative necessities of security of the state wherein they carry out their duties. Nothing in there mention anything that you said in that Wikipedia article that you took out.
Okay, so what exactly are you proving by reading that? You're just demonstrating.
I'm proving
what
you
exactly
that what you read from Wikipedia doesn't even reflect with what's on the Geneva Convention itself. So you can't.
What
even
did I read? What I read that was from the Geneva Convention.
Bring up that blow up your thing again. And
okay. All right. Here is Geneva Convention. This is 3 relative to the treatment of prisoners of war. And here it says immediately upon capture.
Referring to. Go to the 7 and 8 that you were referring to earlier.
Okay, let me go back to that. This is from Article 6, or I think Articles 6 and 7, or 7 and 8, one of the two. And what are you reading from? Geneva 3, Geneva 4, Geneva. What are you reading from? Because there's different Genevas. There's different conferences. So you can't just say, well, Article 7 is going to be the same as the Article 7 in another conference. So, but here it is again.
October 21st, 1950.
Okay. I'm not sure where this one is from. Article 7 and 8. This is for prisoners of war. And by the way, you could make prisoners of war work according to Articles 27 and 34. We got off into a rabbit hole dealing with other things. Your claim was that prisoners of war could not work. According to Articles 27 and 34, can prisoners of war work? Kiki, you there?
I'm reading it. Stand by.
Okay.
All right. I see that now, but just the difference between this type of work and your slave work are two completely different things.
Okay. According to Articles 27, you keep saying that, but you're not showing me any difference. You're not contextually showing me that they treated their prisoners of war any different than how we treat our prisoners of war today. Of course, there's some as far as the way in which they went about doing their capturing was different because of the context, the historical context, and where they were in as far as being able to be sophisticated in your capturing. Yeah, it was more brutal, and it was more in your face.
To listen to anything.
Okay, Articles 27, sir. Can you tell me, were prisoners of war forced to work? Stop avoiding what you obviously can read here. Can they be forced to work? Yes or no?
Yes, but let me read the full article so that you can have it in full context here.
So then you don't have a problem.
Context. Let's read it in full context first.
What's the context? Yeah, go ahead. What's the context? They get 3 square meals a day. Israelites took care of their slaves as well.
You got to read the entire article instead of just a summarized version.
Okay, give me what I'm missing here. Give me what it is.
The full article first so that I can clarify it with you.
Is
That's
this what
one of
Articles
them.
27 to 34 covers?
Yes.
Okay, so what am I
Let me
missing?
read it. You can talk. I'll mute you, and then I'll
You'll
get
mute
back
me. You
on.
can't mute me. But go ahead. Go ahead. Tell me what I'm missing.
Let me finish reading first. How many times do I have to say this?
You haven't started reading.
Because you're not giving me the opportunity here. You keep
Oh,
interrupting.
all right, go ahead.
Yes, I'm still reading.
Okay. All right. All right. So while you read, we're going to listen to some more of Matt. I thought you were going to read out loud. That's what I was waiting for. We're going to listen to some more of Matt and answer some more of his canards.
It is
His
grossly
tired
immoral. It is an embarrassment that anybody would pause for more than half a second to answer that question. Think about what your religion has done to your head. It is making you a slave to the religion because you no longer have the free will and exercise to say, this is wrong.
Versus.
Would you, Valerie? Valerie?
And it also,
Valerie?
oh, yes, sir.
Would you be my slave under the rules in Exodus 21?
I absolutely would. In fact, I think that's more moral. You were talking about the prison system. I hate the prison system myself. I wish we had that system instead of the prison system.
All right. So that's a perfect answer. Perfect answer. And Mac doesn't know how to deal with it. He's confused. Look at his face. He doesn't know what to say. All right. Perfect answer. I don't know who this lady is, but she must have been reading up on her apologetics books, whatever she has. I don't know. Perfect answer. So the system that they had to punish was not only whipping, but also servitude. Sort of like what we call community service today. And I would agree with the young lady. I would rather have somebody who steals from Walmart, or of course, if you're black today, you can steal, and you'll get away with it because of slavery and 400 years of slavery, and now we're woke, so we realize that blacks can steal with impunity now, and that's considered woke. But I would rather have a system in whereby when you harmed another person, when you harmed their livestock, you had to work in order to make up and pay restitution directly to that person, not to their lawyer, not to some GoFundMe, but you had to pay that person directly and or compensate them for the damages that you caused them. All right, so that was the biblical way of paying restitution. Prisoners could pay restitution by working for the people that they've injured or for the town that they've injured, etc. What's going on, Ronan?
Hello.
How's it going?
Going well.
Okay.
I saw where on my computer it says 12 o'clock, and I presume Central Standard Time. So my apologies for being late because I thought it was 12 o'clock.
You're never late, Ronan. What's going on?
Well, no, you invited me today, and I'm just gonna comment on whatever topic you might have at time.
Well, we're talking about slavery, quote unquote slavery in the Bible, and my slavery challenge is to prove that the Bible condones the involuntary servitude of another in scenarios in which we would not do the same today, that we would not involuntarily in our culture we would confine them. We no longer have work chain gangs.
Doesn't the Bible somewhere in the Bible it says if it's a non-Jew, they can kidnap them and then sell them into slavery?
No, kidnapping was punishable by death, and selling into slavery was punishable by death. Even Exodus 21:16.
Okay. Well, the whole argument on both sides, I'm just going to use atheism versus theism here, right? The whole argument, I think, is completely confused on both sides. What they wrote then was what they did at that time. To them, it was acceptable. It was right. It was their law. It was their morals. I'm not faulting them because that's all they knew. Okay, going forward, because the book itself can't be modified. Right, it's foundational. Right, solid foundation. Right, it can't be modified, and that's where it makes the whole concept, out of time. Anachromatic. Right, and that's where I say, wait a minute. That's what they believed at the time. It happened all over the world at that time. But like I said, because of the doctrine, it doesn't change, and that was carried over, for example, in the founding of America.
Yeah. So what we're trying to determine is not whether or not they understood everything that we understood. We have iPhones and things like that today. Big deal. We want to know if whether or not under our laws today, would what they were doing in their civil culture. Now, of course, you have to appeal to war because you can't show me any examples in their civil jurisprudence or civil law. Is anything what they were doing, would that violate our laws today? That's what we're trying to determine. Because in order to judge the people back then, you have to be judging them based on our laws today. Would our laws condemn someone in Eved and a master back then? That's what we're trying to determine.
Wouldn't that be contrasting? Because we don't have.
Well, that's what you're doing when you try to judge, right? When you're judging based off of a standard, and that standard can only be your standard today.
Okay.
Right?
No, because it's different today, right? We can't. In other words, if both of us then and now had slavery, we could say, well, are we treating our slaves better? That's comparison, but we're contrasting because they did it then, we don't do it now.
So we don't do what now? We don't arrest people, and we don't sanction slavery today. We do. It's called the 14th Amendment. If you're a prisoner, you become a ward of the state. So we do sanction slavery today. My challenge is to prove that the ancient Hebrews, sanctioned slavery in ways in which we would not sanction it today. That's what bullet point number 2 literally reads.
Oh, just well, because it's an amendment and they're wards of the state. Obviously, they've been taking out society for committing crime.
Exactly, and that's how they dealt with.
Well, it's
and
not
that's how they dealt with criminals back then too.
Well, no, I mean,
Yes.
With criminals, they arrested them and put them to work, but it was different
Right.
if a person had slaves and then sold one.
That would have been okay.
Huh?
So we're talking about criminals, right? We have criminals today. We put them to work. So chain gangs still exist in some country or some states, like Texas, maybe.
Since you're talking about the 14th Amendment, where in the 14th Amendment does it say that?
The 14th Amendment says that unless slavery is abolished, unless there's a crime committed, then you could.
Where exactly?
Sure. Let me pull that up for you. You've never read the 14th, huh? I guess only the part that talks about blacks.
I'm just asking you, where exactly are you referring to that here?
Yeah, let me read it. Let me read it to you. I'm sorry. It was the 13th. It was the 13th Amendment, not the 14th. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's the 13th Amendment, Section 1, not the 14th. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. Okay, so even the Constitution defines it legally because we're dealing with a legal document, so that would make sense. So volition comes into play here. Volition. Okay, you must prove that the person is there against their will, first and foremost, according to your own Constitution. Okay,
yes,
neither slavery
sold nor are they property.
If they want to be property and they want to be sold, then you don't have a violation of your Constitution.
All right, and
okay, now that's why it starts out.
Slaves are to come from nations around you.
Yeah, sure. We'll deal with that. Let's read the Constitution first.
So let's talk. No, you
Yeah,
keep
if they want to come from around you, if they want to come from around you, all right, you still haven't proven that they are there against their
All right,
will.
first,
Okay, so let me read.
you keep telling me.
Hold on. You wanted me to bring up the slavery. You wanted me to bring up the 13th Amendment. Now I'm bringing it up, and now you're running from it.
No, I already agreed here. Yes, but that's not the same as being bought and sold.
Okay, we'll get to
But
being
in the
bought and
Bible,
sold.
you
Let
are
me
bought
read.
and sold.
Let's
There's
read
a
the
big
13th
difference
Amendment
here.
first. This is a lesson in your own U.S. Constitution.
Neither
This is-
slavery nor involuntary student except as a punishment for crime. There's a difference.
Except as a what?
Again, there's a difference between
Except as a what?
And buying and selling someone. In this,
we'll get to buying and selling. Can you be a slave in America today?
This is not the same as what you're referring to here.
Can you, according to the 13th Amendment, can you be a slave today?
Well, excuse me, but
it's not in the same. It's not in the same context as you're.
Okay, no, I'm not talking about in any context. Is there a context in which you can be a slave? Okay, in this context, can you be a slave in America today? In this context, I'm giving you the context.
No.
Prisoners.
It says except as a punishment. Excuse me, let me finish. That's an exception, not because they're black and you can enslave them.
Well, who's saying anything about being black?
Exception. No, there's an exception. That's the word you're not really considering.
Wait. I am reading that word. I'm saying that there is an exception. You can be a slave.
But that's not. Then it would make it slavery.
Okay.
It would be punishment.
Thank you very much for proving my biblical slavery challenge to be legit. So the punishment for crime and the punishment for being someone who fought against Israel and killed women and children was in fact slavery.
No.
And the same is the punishment today in our own U.S. Constitution.
No, but there were slaves without crimes. That's the point.
No. You need to prove that in the Bible. Right. You need to prove that in Scripture.
There was virtually
you need to prove they didn't. You need to prove they didn't commit a crime.
I agree with you. This man. It's like talking to a brick wall with this guy. You
didn't prove that no one committed a crime. Wait, Ronan. Hey, welcome, P. Mars. Ronan, you said that these people in the Old Testament. Are you suggesting that they were making people into slaves and punishing people without any cause?
No.
Due process?
No, two different things. You're talking different things.
That's why I'm trying to get clarification.
That's why you're not allowing me. Is that why you're not allowing me to finish?
I want you to answer my question. Are you suggesting that the people in the Old Testament were enslaving people or making people slaves and punishing them for crimes that they didn't commit? Is that what you're suggesting? Okay.
Yes.
Well, you need to prove that then. You'll need to prove that. Go ahead.
Okay.
You'll have to prove that instead of asserting.
Well, put it this way. You know when God told Moses to kill, I forget the exact tribe, all of them, and kill everybody, every adult, every animal and everything, except for the girls that haven't slept with a man.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. God told Moses to do that.
Sure.
Right, to go kill people.
What does that have to do?
Why didn't God tell Moses to kill everybody, women and children, virgins too? He didn't. Exception for the underage girls. Now they're innocent.
Where does it say underage girls?
The children who have not slept with a man.
So what does that have to do with slavery? If we're talking about war,
again, they did.
Was that during a war? During peacetime?
No, they did not.
No, I'm asking a question. Was that during war or was that during peacetime?
Well, no, it was during peacetime because God.
It was during peacetime. It was during war or peacetime.
It doesn't matter. You don't keep prisoner of war.
Welcome, P. Mars.
And
well, if you're going to bring up,
I don't understand how you do not still understand.
Okay, simply put, if you're going to bring up scenarios of war And in all of your examples or objections, they're all dealing with war. Why can't you, for Christ's sake, find one incident of someone condoning or sanctioning slavery that is outside of the realm of war? Why? Why is it always,
Joe.
oh, let's go to this
Joe.
passage where it's talking about war? Well,
Joe.
great. If you're going to go to passages that talk about war in the Old Testament, I can go to passages that talk about war in your Geneva Convention and show you that the same thing would have been allowed in cases of war, even in our modern times.
Negative, because you do not
Positive.
capture non-combatants. You do not have
Okay,
non-combatants.
you don't capture. Okay, let's go back to that.
Non-combatants are not prisoners of war, and like I said, when the war is over, you release your prisoner of war.
Okay,
you do not
when
keep your prisoner of war until
you
they
release
are dead.
them to a debt, the 33 billion. You release them to a debt to pay 33 billion.
Again,
right? That's not
reparations
releasing
no
them,
longer
sir.
exist.
Releasing them would have meant
Reparations no longer
releasing them
exist.
would have meant releasing the debt. That's
When
what
do we
that
release
would have been
prisoners of
releasing.
war? What the fuck are you talking about?
He's saying that because the Israelites didn't he claims they didn't release their prisoners of war. He hasn't proven that. That's a claim, by the way. He hasn't proven that. Actually, the prisoners of war in the Old Testament became citizens. If they wanted to become citizens, they could become
Where
citizens.
does it say that? Please.
Where does it say that they are
Please
kept
point me-
against
please
their
point-
will after the
point it
war?
out.
And
Please
when
point it
is
out.
after the war? When is after the war when they were constant battle with different tribes? Where is the after the war? There is no peacetime for 20 years or peacetime for 4 years under President Donald J. Trump. And now we have wartime again under this tyrannical. So there is no peacetime in Israel.
There were
even
never
today,
peace during Trump's administration. I don't even
All
understand
right.
how.
So there's no peacetime in the Middle East during these times. In fact, I can argue there's no peacetime in Israel today because they're surrounded by their enemy. So where is peacetime? You keep bringing
When the
up
war
this
is
peacetime.
over.
The war was never over. Read the text. There's no such thing as the war being over. The entire New Testament, until you have, Alexander the Great, who would come in and just wipe everyone out, or until you had the Romans who had their empire. That's where the peace came in. The peace came in when one of the empires came in and now we're in rule. Now you couldn't go to war without their permission. Okay, so there was no peacetime. You're making up this peacetime.
Alexander the Great. Persians were well before Alexander the
Persians, you had Persians, you had King Cyrus. That's when the peacetime came.
The Assyrians
peacetime didn't come. And so then where are you getting this peacetime
existed well before what you are referring to here?
Okay, where are you getting this peacetime, this example of peacetime? You keep bringing
when the
up
war ends.
What war? When did the war end in the Old Testament, sir?
This is frustrating.
When did the war end in the Old Testament?
Because
hold on. You made a claim about people being released after the war ends, but you can't tell me when the war ended.
Slim here. You
you're stuck, huh?
You don't look at the entirety of the
You're stuck,
Bible.
Huh? You made a comparison to try to judge the Israelites because they didn't release their prisoners of war after the war ended. I'm asking you a very simple question. When did the war end in the Old Testament so that they could release these prisoners of war that you say they should release because we release ours today? When did the war end in the Old Testament?
Once the battle is over.
There were several battles. After which battle would you say that the war was quote unquote over?
War back then was not fought like now. They don't do. You're not talking about total war like nowadays that you see. War tends to be back then sporadic battles, and once victor has been determined from those sporadic battle, for the most part, war has ended.
So you just release them so they can regather their tools and weapons and attack you from the rear? This guy is crazy.
Is
So
he a
have you
historian?
read?
Study war.
Have you read
I
Sun
study
Tzu?
war. That's
Have
part
you
of
read?
my
Have you
profession.
read? Have you read Kiki? Have you read Sun Tzu?
Sun Tzu is the most, how should I say it, basic. He's a car salesman when it comes
Okay.
to war.
All right, Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu would argue. Even he would argue, the car salesman, when it comes to war. Even he knew that you never release your enemy, and so they can attack you and regather their weapons and attack you from the rear. That's not how it worked in ancient warfare.
Sun Tzu also
Sir.
claims that if
P-Mars,
you
go
lose
ahead.
a text,
P-Mars, you wanted to say something.
you will be victorious 100%.
Okay,
I'm holding.
so this isn't. But basically, let me just say this. So this isn't the 19th century, sir, where you can hop on your transport vehicle and go back to your safe country, and then that's the end all to be all. The war is over. You sign a peace treaty, and that's it. This is the ancient Near East, sir. Go ahead, P-Mars.
And
Yeah,
like I mentioned earlier, you don't
I
capture
guess he thinks his name is P.
non-combatants.
Mars.
And you don't capture non-combatants in Scripture either.
You
I don't know
just-
why that's
you
why
just
that's a
read
big
to me
deal.
You're going to take kill all the women and children who were not part of the combatants here.
Okay,
You're
that's
also
First
going to
Samuel. That's a different. That has
capture-
a
and
context.
You're also
That's
going
different.
to capture the young or the females who have not.
No, actually,
man,
it's
that's
no.
capturing non-combatants there.
No. Actually, it says you may marry them, and you could marry them in our culture today. You can marry people who are left behind after the war. You don't believe me? Here's some pictures for you. Why don't you go condemn them to hell or
I
wherever
think
you
I'm
think they should go?
This talk to you is like a brick wall. You
Okay.
are
So are these young is this young man who fought in the Korean War, is he going to come under judgment under your moral system? Because he married one of the survivors, he captured and married one of the women. And when I say capture, I don't mean that you would capture them in the same way that you would capture an enemy combatant. Obviously, you would pull up. It is a transport vehicle, and soldiers are directing you to go into the transport vehicle. A woman and a child, that's not considered capturing. I understand that, quote unquote, Slim Jim, but we understand that she's compelled to go. Okay, where is she going? She's going to run off into the forest. She's going to go where the military, the United States military, Marines are holding guns and rifles. She's going to go wherever they tell them to go. Okay, and she went in the military vehicle and was taken back to the military base. And one of the men there married her. Is there something illegal or immoral about that?
She wasn't forced to, like the ones that are happening in the Bible.
Prove the ones in the Bible were forced to. Prove they were forced to get on the transport vehicle.
This is ridiculous.
They were compelled to get on the transport vehicle. That's my point. So when you say Slim Jim, when you try to obfuscate on the word capture, as if there aren't different ways, or not obfuscate, well, you were sort of, but when you try to act like the word capture can only mean one thing, you're being disingenuous. You can capture someone, you can capture citizens, you can round them up, whatever terminology you like to use, rounding them up, making sure that they have safe passageway and get them out of the combat zone. You're not capturing them, I guess you would say, in the same way you would capture someone who might be an enemy combatant and might be someone that's a threat. I understand that, but the concept or the principle is still the same. You're rounding them up. Are you forcing them? Technically, no, because if they try to run away, do you go after them? Probably. Your sergeant probably would tell you you need to go after her, because she not only can she be in danger, but she can also be someone who is going to tip off another regiment that's 100 yards down the road. So no, you can't just let her run off. You will capture her. So don't give me that nonsense, Slim Jim, about not capturing non-enemy combatants. You're full of it. And for somebody that says that they were in the army to even say something so stupid makes me believe that you were never in the army. That's just my rant. Go ahead, Slim Jim. I'm sorry, P Mars. What do you have to say?
Well, I was trying to find. I'm holding a book, The Technological Society, and there's a passage in here that talks about ancient slavery in ancient Israel, and he says in here that it was like virtually non-existent. Like there was
right. Yeah,
it was
there's
mainly in
another.
like Egypt. Was the main nation of slavery was Egypt, not Israel. Israel, yeah, there's like hardly any slavery.
Yeah, this is J.A. Moitner, who wrote, who's a scholar, Hebrew scholar, Old Testament scholar, one of the two, which is basically the same thing. No, probably not. He wrote that the Hebrews have no vocabulary of slavery or servanthood, only of servanthood. We took that word and we made it into something that it was never intended to be.
I think the word is ibed, which it just
Eved, yeah.
Eved, and it just means like work. It doesn't necessarily mean like forced work. It's just.
Can y'all show me the
work.
passage here that you're referring to here? That all the passages only use the word eved and then it's translated differently?
Well, dude, I mean, use your logic, right? Like, we're talking about a people who escaped slavery in Egypt. So you really think these people escaped slavery, turned around, and started enslaving themselves and other people? How does
Yes.
that? It isn't logical. It's not logical.
It's not logical, and he can't prove it.
It's
He's been
not
trying
logical.
to prove it for an hour
There's
now.
a reason why in the passage said you can buy slaves from other nations. There's a
Literally,
reason why
Leviticus
there's passages
25.
on
you
explaining
realize
how
that
you can treat your slave. There's a
you
reason
can do
why
that in
there's
America.
passages where you can abuse your slave to a certain point.
There's different rules for foreign and domestic workers, right? This is referring to workers. They're buying their time. Like McDonald's buys you for 8 hours a day and compensates you with money, but they kind of own you. They tell you what to do. You work for them for that time period, right? This is what's happening in this passage. None of these people are actually owned by their masters. They can leave at any time.
That's not true.
How do you know that's not true?
Because the Bible tells you that's not true.
Because dude, do you realize there's more information than the Bible? I actually went to extra biblical sources and looked into the actual history on this.
Extra
You're
biblical
totally full of shit.
contradicts the Bible.
Hold on, P-Mars. Let him
if
prove it.
Contradict the Bible.
Sources contradict the Bible.
It doesn't contradict the Bible.
Let him prove it, P-Mars. Let him prove it. He spewed it. Let him prove it.
He's equivocating.
Let him prove it. Can you prove the Eved in Leviticus 25 is taken from those other nations? Can you prove that? Or you just stated it?
Which verse are you referring to?
You brought it up. Leviticus 25, verse 43.
He's equivocating on the word slave. He's saying like, well, I don't care about, the definition of slave in ancient Israel. I'm just going to apply my 20th century definition of slave on a fucking word that is like completely different.
Were these women slaves? Kiki, were these women slaves? These were some more war brides.
Which verse
these
are
were some more
here?
Verse 40, 41, 42, 43, around there. That's the liberals' favorite verse.
Which chapter?
Leviticus 25. You brought it up. You can find it, I'm sure. Why are you looking for that? Were these women slaves, Ronan? Ronan, you there?
Are talking about your male and female slaves are to come from the nations
other nations, right? Where does it say they are to come? You are to force them to come. Could they be coming willingly?
Like a foreign worker? Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Yeah, migrant worker. Yeah, could they be coming willingly, Kiki? Or do they have to be coming by force? Because you say they should be.
Again, based on this, and then the verses that tells you how to treat your slaves. And
all right, we'll get to the ones where we'll get to the treatment. Hold on, we'll get to the treatment. Let's deal with this first now.
Don't you realize your evidence is extremely? You're like cherry picking a few passages. Do you realize that the Christians in Rome worked to end slavery? Do you know that?
That's true. Christianity ended slavery from about the 5th century to the 10th century.
They would buy slaves with the sole intention of freeing them. Christians did this. Why are they doing this? If the Bible says you should enslave people,
so that they can convert more people.
This is the same guy that wouldn't. He wouldn't argue that for why the Democrats want more immigrants. He wouldn't argue that so they can vote for Democratic. He wouldn't argue that but for the Israelites, he would.
Hilarious.
For the Israelites, he would, even though he doesn't have any idea of the context historically. All right. So are these Ronan? Are these women slaves? Ronan?
Well, the to me, it's like it's social pressures that force
Yeah.
these women to become servants.
They
Right.
weren't servants; these were actual wives. Okay, the Bible. Well, actually, they were servants because they were wives, and
Well, no,
the
but
wife is to
the
submit.
way the way you're phrasing things about how they did
Uh-huh.
then, everybody was like slavery was just a technical term because the person had to go into involuntary servitude, so they call it a
Uh-huh.
slave.
Yeah. These are
Okay.
Korean women who were left survivors of the Korean War, and they were married by many of our troops. Are these women sex slaves? Yes or no?
No. Well,
Okay.
the yes and no. I
Whoa,
know, I
whoa,
know,
whoa,
I
whoa. You
know,
should.
I
Yeah,
know, I
okay,
know,
explain that.
I know.
Explain that.
Excuse me. I
Yeah,
know
explain
the man saw something he could control. Right? He can control this woman. So yeah,
So
you could call her a slave, but his mind, oh yeah, I control this woman. He enslaved her because of his position, not because it was a social situation. They met, talked, discovered
so
that they were interested in each other and fell in love.
wait, how do you know they
No,
didn't do that? How do you know they didn't do
because
that
you
at the
know
camp?
full well,
How do you know they didn't do that at the
put it
camp?
this way, but I don't know if you can think like a man in war. But if you're in war and all of a sudden you got all these women and you pick one, it's not because you met her and chatted her up. It's
Uh-huh.
because, oh, I can control this. This is my property.
Right.
That's a man's mind right there. He's not saying it, but she's going
Okay.
to be my wife. No, this is
Did
going to be
he
my
did he
property.
violate any laws? Did he violate Geneva or any war that deals with regulating how you should behave or interact during wartime? Did he violate anything?
Okay.
I don't know if the Geneva Convention says anything about
Okay, should he
marrying
be
someone.
arrested upon right? So there's nothing in the Geneva that says that he should be arrested and tried for war crimes,
No,
right?
no,
Okay. All right. So you believe it's immoral because that you just don't like the way the power what liberals would consider to be a power type of dynamic, and that's why CEOs
conservative.
shouldn't right
Conservative.
right.
Excuse me.
If you really
No, no,
Excuse me.
no,
comparing
no,
the
no,
U.S.
no.
Excuse me.
You're not a conservative, sir.
A man that does that. A man that
Yo.
does that is conservative. He
Okay.
wants it.
All right.
He wants it his way.
What
That's
are you trying to
conservative.
conserve? That's my
His
question.
power, position.
All
He
right.
would have equal
Okay.
billing if it was a so-called fair relationship. It's
Fair
not.
relate. Okay. All right. So wait. So we're getting now into the dynamics here, and to the minutia of the mind of the liberal. In the mind of the liberal, if some of you don't understand what Ronan is referring to or speaking about, if the power dynamic is that which is a vast power dynamic, it means CEO and secretary. That CEO is immoral because he has power over the secretary. If he's immoral if he makes any advance
Yes.
No,
towards her.
no, because of the
So then,
person and the employer entered into a contract. That's a
no,
legal
I'm
con
talking about dating.
hold on,
I'm talking about dating, sir.
let
You're
me
missing the
finish, let
point.
me finish, let
You're
me finish,
missing
man.
the point.
This
I'm
is gonna
talking
be
about
about you, and
dating.
it's like just different.
Hold
That's
on. You're
different.
missing the point, Ronan.
No,
Listen.
you're missing the point because
No, Ronan. Listen.
if I
I'm
contract,
talking about
Hey,
dating,
hey,
Ronan.
hey,
Not talking about working for the person.
Chopper,
I'm
stop.
talking about dating.
Stop. Relax.
You would suggest that the secretary, that the CEO was wrong. You would even suggest that sexual harassment, right? If he makes an advance on someone who he has control or power over, right?
well, yeah.
Okay, that's all I was trying to bring out. I don't know what you were talking about.
I'm
So,
talking about what you said. You
okay.
said because it's a contract, because you're working, you're a slave. You're not. You can quit. You don't have to be there 7 years. You can quit in 2 days. It doesn't
Okay.
matter. It's a contract. It's a breach of contract because the person is quitting for a reason. Yeah, okay, I can agree with that. But the owner can't say, no, you can't leave and beat the person up.
No, you can't
Oh my
leave,
God.
and you can't beat anyone up. And okay, but my point
People are
was
so
that
dumb.
you have a problem with war brides, not because it's a violation of Geneva or violation of any law, which you can't demonstrate, because it's not, but because you just have, like most liberals today, you have a problem with people in power positions making advances, because in your mind she's gonna have some sort of compulsion to say yes because you're her boss, right?
Well, yeah, because the
Okay,
person, she wants to
I
keep her
agree.
job, man.
I
Which is
agree.
wrong.
So these women wanted to survive, and they wanted to get the heck out of there instead of breathing in Agent Orange or whatever else kind of chemicals they were using in battle in Vietnam, Korea, World War One, World War Two. She is saying, "Look, my husband is dead. My children will starve. Yes, I will marry you, and I'm going back to the United States to start a new life." Is that what happened in World War One, World War Two in Korea?
Yeah, but you were comparing
Okay.
it to an
So when
employee.
that
But you're
happens,
comparing it
hold
to
on, hold
you
on.
were
So when
trying to equivocate an employee
No,
and
no, we're not
and
talking about
business
employees,
owner.
sir. We're talking about war now. You guys want to bring up war every
Why
time
do
we
you
bring
want to
up
jump?
slavery.
Why do you want to mix all these topics so you can have
No,
the
no,
upper hand?
no,
Why
no.
do you do that? Why
We're
do you do
talking.
that?
No, we were talking about war before you came, sir.
No,
We're
you were
talking
jumping.
about
You jumped
no,
over to employee. I want to
no.
know
I
why
didn't
you're
say anything
mixing that
about
in.
employer employee. I didn't say anything about employer employee.
You
All
said
right,
secretary. You
we were
said
talking.
secretary.
That was my example of a power
Well, why
dynamic
are
in
you
which one
mixing it
has
in?
more
Well,
power
again,
than the other, sir. It has nothing to do with the employer employee relationship, but the power versus someone who is under control of the man who's in power. So the soldier is under control. The soldier is to the CEO, and the employer is the slave, to so to say. That's the analogy I'm drawing. So
the
there's a
employer
power
is the
dynamic.
slave. You just said the employer is the slave, so that's
Oh God.
confusing.
The employer is this the slave master is the CEO, right? In my analogy, I'm just comparing to show you that there is a power dynamic and one has more power than the other. I'm not denying that's the case. When you go to war, if you are the victor, you have the power and control over the victims of war, the survivors of war.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm not denying that. But why is it when the Hebrews say you may marry them? Why is it rape? Understand God understanding. Yes,
It
you do
doesn't
have
say
control.
you may. It
Why
says
is
you
it rape
shall.
when they do it, but when our soldiers do it, it's not rape?
It is rape.
Okay, so you would call this man a rapist?
Put it this way: if it's against
Ron,
the
do you mind if I
if
interrupt Ron real quick?
You would call those men a rapist? Those men that married those Korean women?
There's
You would say that they were rapists?
there's extremely different scenario from what you were showing with that U.S. soldier and the Korean woman versus
Mhm.
what happened in that text that we read earlier, where that there's only the young girls are left in that entire city, their entire city state, whatever you call them,
Mhm.
because the whole entire male population, their mothers, they were all wiped already. And that's the only population you have. You can't compare that to the Korean War, where the entire the male population was still there, and this Korean woman.
Which passage are you talking about? Because the passage has a context, and if the context is not a normal battle, which I don't think First Samuel is, I don't think First Samuel is normative, meaning that's not the normative prescription for what you would do with women and children. The normative prescription would be to marry them, and they would become your eveds or your servants. They would become part of your household. Is that what you're referring to?
I'm done
When
talking to you. Talk to you is like a brick wall. You
Okay,
compartmentalize,
I'm trying to
I got a
understand.
real. I
and
want to
again, I
ask
already said
Kiki.
it's past the 1:30 mark that I plan on staying.
Uh huh.
Well,
If you
Kiki,
if
Okay.
you
real
plan on
quick,
doing cars again,
is Is the only reason you
I'll
believe
come
this?
back on in 2
Is the only
weeks
reason
if
you
we
believe this
plan
because
on
of
the
Matt
entire.
Dillahunty told you?
I
All right,
marked it.
yeah.
I typed it in earlier today that I'm only planning on staying till 1:30 because I got better things to do.
I found the verse, the page where I was trying to. It's page 36 on This Is the Book, The Technological Society. And he's talking about how slavery is actually a hindrance to technological development, and he says right here, this guy is a professor at the University of Bordeaux. He's a historian. He says, there was in fact greater technical progress in civilizations where slavery was prevalent, for example, Egypt, than in others where the institution was practically unknown, for example, Israel. You hear that? He's saying that the institution of slavery was practically unknown in Israel. And this is a historian.
Kiki, before you leave, can you ask? You're an atheist. You believe in evolution. Was Cheddar Man black or white?
That's irrelevant.
Well, you said you were leaving. I just wanted to ask you a question on your way out. Does it matter if Cheddar Man was black or white?
It's irrelevant right now.
Oh, all right. I just wanted your opinion. Because
in terms of what we depict in their skin pigment, whatever, that's irrelevant to what the actual fossil record presents.
Oh, okay. But you believe in Cheddar Man, right?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. I might have to go back and look at the fossil record to There's many different fossil records. There's many different lines in that fossil record. You can't just bring up a random one and then expect me to just randomly pick that out.
Well, if he's black, shouldn't it be Hot Cheetos Man?
Brie Larson stars.
All right, I'll come back in 2 weeks and we can talk about tires finally.
So Kiki, come back next week and
I have a wedding to go to next week. I'm sorry.
Oh, you have a wedding? Who's getting married?
One of my buddies.
Oh, congratulations! Are you the best man?
No, but I'm still one of his friends. So
is his wife a slave?
Guess you weren't that much of a friend.
Wish him many happy returns.
I have one best man out of the entire.
Were you at least part of the what do you call it, groomsmen? Were you like one of the groomsmen?
No.
Man, some friend. You have a friend in Jesus, however. What's going on, Veckel?
Not much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. We hear you just fine. All right, Kiki. See you next time.
All right.
All right. Make some more sense. Make some more sense next time.
All right. Continue to compartmentalize and pretend that the morally bankrupt book is not morally bankrupt.
All right.
What are you?
Okay. All right,
bro.
Yeah,
you just got.
Kiki's upset because he can't prove that the Bible is immoral.
I showed you a historian saying there's no slavery in ancient Israel, and you're gonna still perpetuate that false narrative. Like, what the fuck?
All right, like I said again.
What the fuck? Why don't you do some research for yourself instead of listening to Matt Dillahunty?
One historian that contradicts what the Bible says. So is the Bible true, or is the historian?
It doesn't contradict what the Bible says. You're equivocating on the word slavery.
I want to know how is the Bible morally
bankrupt? Is equivocation too big of a word? Is it too big of a word for you?
Slave is your property.
I want to know how the Bible is morally bankrupt. That's
Kiki, stop saying property.
I'll come back in 2 weeks.
Because there's nothing wrong with property if you want to be the property of. Stop using property and buying and purchasing as arguments.
Again,
those are just words, Kiki.
I'll come back later.
Those are just words.
They didn't even own anyone as property.
Come back with more than just words that have no meaning. Therefore, you just fill in the meaning with whatever you want the text to say. The context will determine what purchasing and buying actually meant. And when you actually read the context, you'll determine that it could not have meant purchasing and buying against the will or the volition of anyone, of any individual, other than in the case of war, other than in the case of criminality, in which your butt should be captured. You should be forced to work.
Jill
should be forced to pay.
Check this out. John 8:35.
John chapter
8:35. A slave is not a permanent member of the family, but a son belongs to it forever. Oh, what does that contradict that guy's narrative? Oh no. They're not property. They can leave whenever they want. They're not permanent members of the family. It says in the Bible. Uh-oh.
Yes, so you could leave whenever you wanted,
Fucking idiot.
or you can be adopted by the family. You can be adopted into the family, or what scholars call adoption through manumission.
That guy literally just parroted Matt Dillahunty's arguments. He's not done any thoughts of his own on this subject. He's not done any research whatsoever. He just goes, "Oh, I like Matt Dillahunty. He must be right. He's fat."
Speaking of Matt Dillahunty,
because he's fat.
I like this lady's answer. Check out this lady,
Valerie.
Oh, yes.
Valerie.
Would you be my slave under the rules in Exodus 21?
I absolutely would. In fact, I think that's more so.
Uh-oh.
This is the second time I've heard somebody say that to Matt Dillahunty.
Sexual harassment.
Sexual harassment. He doesn't know what to do now.
They can't stand it. G-Man said the same exact thing.
Why is he asking this lady on the phone? His workers, the people that work for him are
wait a minute.
slaves.
We know what his attempt is, but he asked G-Man the same exact question, and G-Man gave the same exact response that the lady did. And he freaked out and hung up on him, kicked him off the show. Now this, what you're about to show, I haven't seen yet, but I'm dying to see how he responds.
Oh, man, watch this.
Moral. You were talking about the prison system. I hate the prison system myself. I wish we had that system instead of the prison system.
Look at him.
Because there's somebody.
He doesn't know what to do.
He's dumbfounded.
He's looking for his agent. He's looking for his agent. What do you say?
Can we stop doing this show on Sundays and do it on Saturdays instead?
So we can get more Jews calling in, because these Christians are too smart. Let's call them the Jewish Sabbath.
Need more Jews.
I didn't know these guys were gonna start, trafficking in slavery. I guess we should report them.
Yeah, we should.
So he can't say
according to them, people, if you're a slave, if someone owns you, according to them. So that's his definition of a slave.
We own atheists every weekend, though, so maybe we're guilty too.
Steal something from you instead of being locked away and rotting in a cell where they'll get raped and beat up. They stay with the family they stole from for 6 years. Work for that family.
I think you've done the impossible. I think Matt just quit.
If you were God, would you ever include a passage that says it's okay to own people as property?
What do you think? If you were God, would you make a passage that said it's okay?
It's a stupid question, because
I don't think God said that.
No. But even if he did, though, the problem is that he would find another way to complain about that. Because they're not doing what they do because the text is wrong, or because the text is in some sort of error, or even moral error. They're doing it because of their hatred towards God, period. If the text said exactly something else that would be more feasible to them, they would complain about that. So it doesn't matter.
It is true. That is true. Because they're like with the slavery thing, when I first started listening, I mean, you can just, as simple as he's even quoting like one of the 10 Commandments. It's like, they're not even taking into consideration the evidence of the text. That's, they want to paint this picture with cherry picking, and it's really ugly.
I give you a perfect example of how some of these atheists arbitrarily whine and complain about some of the things that are superficially good. Okay, for example, when it talks about loving your neighbor, okay, the atheist will ask you, well, why should I love my neighbor? Even though if they do bad, he says, because God commands you to do it. He said, oh, wait a minute. So now God wants me to do that? So why can I not do it on myself? So they whine and complain about simple moral things like that. Things about telling you to love your neighbor instead of hate them. That's not good enough for them either.
Skepticism gone wild, right?
In Exodus 21,
retarded.
Yeah.
Exodus 21, it says anyone who kidnaps someone is to be put to death, whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession.
It doesn't matter.
Right there, But I mean, it has to be voluntary slavery, right? Because it's
Would you
saying
It has to be done. Yeah.
if
Let
you
me ask
kidnap
you-
someone against their will, you're to be put to death. So it has to be voluntary slavery. It can't. It's literally against the rules
Right.
here.
Right.
The atheists
Well, we
are-
See,
wouldn't
but now
call
we're
it.
going to say it's.
Go ahead,
Sorry, go
Jamie.
ahead.
No, go ahead, Jamie. I was going to say
I was
we
going to
wouldn't-
say it's.
we wouldn't call it slavery if it was voluntary. So in our
Right, yeah,
vernacular,
it
we
wouldn't be
wouldn't
called
call it slavery. So that's why I would say slavery doesn't exist if we define it the way we
No.
define slavery
Yes,
today.
exactly.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I don't even
Jake.
think the Bible uses the word slavery. It uses the
Right.
word
Yeah.
tribute or whatever. So
Yeah.
It's even beside the point because you can show them in the text that the principle of like what P. Mars just mentioned, even in the Sabbath commandment, love thy neighbor, all that, all those examples suggest an implication about they're either different contexts showing examples of like not the normative thing, like Jill said, but like then now they'll just move the goalposts and say, well, it's not like we think the whole text is consistent with itself, so they'll go wherever they need to deny it, and it becomes really obvious.
Exactly.
I see Jesus as a very good politician. In context, he was talking to the Pharisees and Sadducees when he said, "Love thy neighbor as thyself," which basically implied a fellow Jew.
No,
Not any foreigner.
That's
He
ridiculous.
was talking to the authority figures
No, that's
in
false.
that society.
No, that's false.
But that's what it says. That's what it says
that's
in
false.
context.
No, that's false.
And it's in,
Ronan, let me
by the way,
ask
that's in Leviticus.
We can
He didn't
refute
make
that
that
easily
up.
right now.
Ronan,
I
pull that passage up.
mean,
Vecco.
I could sneeze and it would be refuted.
No, I have it up on the
Ronan
screen.
has
I
a
can-
speech impediment.
Vecco, go ahead and share your screen. Pull that passage up. Ronan, I want to ask you a question while Vecco's pulling up.
Okay, what passage? What passage is it?
Leviticus 25, right, Ronan?
Oh no, not Leviticus 25.
Which passage are you referring to, Ronan?
I'm looking at
No, he's the one
Is that the
Matthew
one about the
28,
homos, Vecco?
It says here, Matthew 22 verses 34 to 40.
You want me to screen share?
Yeah, go ahead and screen share.
I'm on my lunch break, so I won't be able to stay too long. So
all right, go ahead, Vecco. Vecco's going to share that passage and then help you
let's see
exegete
if we
it.
can blow this up a little bit.
Ronan,
Okay, so-
would you be a slave? Answer Matt Dillahunty's question. Would you be a slave according to Exodus 22? Would you be a slave to Matt?
Why are you asking him?
Ronan, would you be a slave according to Matt, or according to Exodus 21? Would you be a slave to Matt Dillahunty?
Well, no, today,
No.
no.
Okay. All right. I would say no also, but I might certainly for different reasons.
Yeah.
All right. So you're looking at Exodus 21. Is this the passage you're referring to, Ronan?
No, he's
I read. It says Matthew 22 34 to 40. It says here.
Okay, what does it say? Matthew 22. What does it say?
Okay, it starts at 34. It says, "But when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together." 35. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, "Master, which is the great commandments in the law?" 37. Jesus said unto him, "Thou shalt love thy Lord with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind." 38. This is the first and great commandment. 39. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. 40. On these two commandments hang all the law and prophet. Again, he's talking to Hebrew authority figures. So
wait.
Look, it would be different. It would be different if he was talking to the masses.
Oh
he
my
wasn't.
gosh!
Wait, Ronan.
Specifically, he was playing politics.
Are you suggesting that because he talked to the Pharisees, that's all he spoke to?
Well, he repeated it elsewhere. If he repeated elsewhere to the masses,
Ronan, that's not even an argument, Ronan.
If he said it to the masses, please quote that for me.
Ronan, this is so stupid. Are you telling me, okay, just because he's speaking directly to the Pharisees, that the answer to their question only pertains to the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Is that what you're saying?
Is that an argument?
It's called politics, like what you do or what I do in order to fit into
you
the
are so dishonest, bro.
situation.
Oh,
Anybody would adjust.
I'm about to pull a Matt Dillahunty and I'm about to leave.
What are you, Ronan? That's not even that's not even a starter. Like
what he's
that's
doing
a non-argument. What are you talking about?
This is what he's doing. He's ignoring
I'm talking about context. I'm talking about context.
You're not worried about context. What you're doing, Ronan, is extremely dishonest and it's blatant at that.
No, it's not.
What you're doing is you are directly denying the fact that the answer to their question is a transcendent one that is universal and transcendent. It did not only pertain only to the Pharisees.
Well, no, excuse me. You said to their question.
Okay, listen. I'll say this again. You're being very dishonest right now. They asked the question.
I'm not being dishonest because I quoted the fact that he's talking to the Pharisees.
No, you're being very dishonest. No, you're being.
Why does that matter?
Everybody in the room knows
to
that
the
you're being
Pharisees.
dishonest.
Is it true? Is it true what he's saying?
It is not just to the Pharisees. Oh my goodness!
It is.
He's addressing the law.
He's only addressing them. He's talking about the law, which is universal and transcendent. It is not only for the Pharisees.
No, they didn't have internet.
That is a lie, my friend.
They didn't have a live feed.
You are lying, as you
Ronan,
always do.
Why is that even relevant, Ronan? What do you?
Because he's talking to authority.
Blah 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 blah.
Are you taking the fact that? Are you like mad at God because you have a speech impediment and then you make yourself suffer?
Ronan is so dishonest. He does this with all the time. He does this with
not dishonest. Who's he talking to? Authority figures or the masses?
Oh, who Jesus?
Wait, so Ronan, if the president were to get on the president select, if he were to get on TV in front of the Congress and everyone in the Congress during one of his meetings, and is he only talking to them, or is what he says only applies to them?
Yeah, be fruitful, multiply.
Or the entire world, or the entire country, rather.
That's two different scenarios. We have freedom of expression here. We're talking
about practicing.
They didn't have it then. They didn't have it.
Principles and standards. Principles and standards.
This is driving me nuts.
This is not even an argument to waste time. Let's move on to something else.
It's terrible.
I mean, that's just crazy because he was speaking to a group directly that doesn't apply to us.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. I mean,
the Bible was written for us, Ronan, not necessarily to us. Even Paul's letters were written to the church in Corinth, or the Corinthians, right? Or the Ephesians, the church of Ephesus. But it's written for our learning, for our understanding of these principles that guide us in our daily living today. So I don't even know where
you repeated the word church. Okay. That means all of the people agree to that standard.
Gosh, this is
okay.
Agree to it.
Desperate.
Okay.
Ron, you're trying way too hard to win an unnecessary argument.
No, you're just looking at it.
Nobody's buying it.
You're just looking at it from one side, assuming that
I got the text on the screen. It says, but when the Pharisees, let's read it.
Let's read the text. Read the text, Ronnie.
Yeah,
let's read the text.
When the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they, who's the they? The Pharisees were gathered together, right? Then verse 35, then one of them, who? The Pharisees, which was a lawyer, asked him a question. Okay, stop right there. This is the Pharisees, one of the Pharisees asking Christ a question. And then the question is in 36, Master, which is the great commandment in the law. Then Jesus said, now remember the question. He didn't say which is the great commandment in the law for Pharisees or for Sadducees or just for the Jews. Okay. He just said, Master, which is the great commandment in the law. He didn't ask for it whether or not this pertains to a specific class of people or group of people. Okay, this is something that is universal and transcendent. This pertains to all people. Okay, And how do we know that? Just go by looking at verses 37 and 38 and 39. He doesn't say thou shalt love thou if you be a Pharisee and a Sadducee or a Jew shall love the Lord with all your God and all that. Come on, man. You had to add that into the text because you are once again displaying how desperate you are with the text.
Well, I don't think they had mixed.
Yeah, we know you don't think, but
I don't think they had mixed neighborhoods in those days.
Oh my gosh, dude! Are you serious? Check out Leviticus 19.
If any outsider
Ronan, do you realize though what Jesus is reiterating? He's reiterating here something from the Old Testament, Leviticus 19. Have you not read Leviticus 19?
I'd have to read it again.
Yeah, I know. I know that. Read Leviticus 19. And what is God saying in there? There's a part in that chapter where he says the exact same thing to the Israelites. He tells them to love their neighbor, to love the
Israelites,
to love. No, that's false.
You said Israelites.
No, that's false. That's false. You said you haven't even read the chapter, and you're going to try to correct me on it.
Well, you're the one quoting it. You're the one
challenge you right now.
Assuming that you understand
Let's go to Leviticus 19. Okay. See, you talk a lot of sugar smack, but you don't know how they taste. And here we go.
St. Tommy, if you're in the chat, click on the link. I have another question to ask.
All right, here we go.
And it's not pertaining to homosexuality, so
okay.
you know you're not answering that one.
Rona, you looking on the screen? You looking on the screen, Ronan? Come on, man. I gotta leave in a few minutes.
Ronan.
Okay, well, he's not ready. Okay. Maybe he's working on that list.
Ronan's there.
Verse 32 says, thou shalt rise up before the hoary head, and okay, we don't need to talk about that. Verse 33, and if a stranger, if you look it up in I think it's in the Septuagint, the Greek word there would be proselytos, which is where we get the word proselyte from. And we all know what a proselyte is, right? It's one who converts from one thing to another, right? So we had a lot of those in amongst the people, the biological Israelites, people who converted to Israel, to the laws of Moses. Okay, so verse 13. Wait, let me finish. Verse 33. And if a stranger, this is non-Israelites, non-biological Israelites, sojourn with thee in your land, you shall not vex him. Verse 34. But the stranger, there's that word again, proselytos, that dwelleth with you, shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself. Why? He answers the question. Because you were strangers in the land of Egypt, and I am the Lord your God.
Okay, the point right there, you made it.
Right there. So
because they're strangers.
Mic drop.
Strangers in the land of Egypt. So
mic drop.
They have to play the politics of Egypt.
They have to play
the politics of Egypt.
So Ronan, does the
politics that they're strangers. It says right there that they're strangers in the land of Egypt. So they have to play the politics.
They had to play the politics of Egypt. Okay. So did the politics of Egypt say that they had to treat the foreigner just as if they treated the
yes, it's politics. Okay. It's a politics. You're not going to vex him because you're not going to vex the man or person because you're a stranger. Because you're a stranger, you don't have that kind of authority to vex someone. That's the point of them being in the land of Egypt.
So it was the Egyptian. It was Egyptian policies that led to these principles in Scripture.
Of course, they have to.
Hey Joe, I gotta head up, but I'm gonna listen for you.
All right, see, back up. Smokey is here. Smokey, would you be Matt Dillahunty's slave according to Exodus 21?
No, because he would be a horrible, unrighteous, evil, vile cuckold of a slave master. I might be yours. Like if you were wealthy and had a lot of land and could treat me good and give me slabs of venison. Veckel said he'd give me slabs of venison if I was his slave. So you gotta be able to meet that, and I'll consider it.
Yeah, and Matt also voted early. So no, I would not be his slave because he voted for Biden and he voted early. So
I wonder if Ronan knows what the option was if you weren't a slave back then. What were you in the ancient Near East?
I don't know.
What were you if you weren't an Eved?
We call them victims.
Or prostitutes. If you were a woman, you were a prostitute. So what would be your station in life if you weren't an Aved or in the ancient Near East? What were your other options as far as occupation? Ronan?
What do you mean? I mean, there's plenty of occupations. If I'm a
Sure, name
so-called-
one.
Well, the classic is carpentry.
Carpentry. Whose carpet are you going to carpent?
Anybody, if I'm out there trying to find a job, I can go work in a,
Okay, where would you find a job in the ancient Near East? Come on, let's learn to think critically, Ronan. I know it's not something your kind practices on a regular basis. Where would you find work in the ancient Near East?
I'm glad you stooped that low, to the pool that I come from, because you can't get any higher than you are now. Why do you like to throw these little petty little insults in there? What kind of weakling are you as a Christian?
I feel like
really.
I
what
feel
kind
like
of it's okay for you to throw these little nasty barbs in there, yet I'm supposed to be like lost or something.
Okay, I've already.
Why are you so condescending
Ronan
as
does
a
this.
true Christian?
Ronan does this whenever his
Answer
back
my
is against
question,
the wall.
dude. Why are you so condescending as a true Christian? Why are you such a hypocrite?
I'm so Christ, I think
Because you're forgiven, okay? That's the answer.
You know what?
You're forgiven. So you can be as stupid as you want to be, and you'll be forgiven.
So now answer the question.
He's running
now,
at the
Ronan.
mouth. He's running.
Answer the question now. You distracted.
You're the one that's starting up with the stupidity.
There's plenty of prophetic and scriptural examples of condescension. You're an idiot. You know what you're
we'll get to that, Smokey. I don't want him to slide away.
All right.
I was gonna call him another name, but he'll
there
just
you go.
go off on another rant.
You just do what you want to be true. I mean, I can understand Smokey Saint being a
every time. I'm gonna mute you, Ronan. Every time his back is against the wall, he will go back, even if it was 10 minutes about an insult. Okay, Ronan, I want you to answer the question. All right, I already apologize for insulting you. Where would you find carpentry work in the ancient Near East 4, 5, 6,000 years ago?
Probably anywhere, man.
Maybe
There's
not that
other
long
people.
ago.
There's other people. I mean, I could go.
Okay,
elsewhere.
and who are these people that you're speaking of? What was their position in life?
What other tribes there are, man? People need labor, and I can go hire on. They pay me. I'm good.
Okay, so the answer is there would have to be someone that had the means to pay you, right?
Or barter. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would have to be someone that actually owned land.
No, it could be a shop owner. It could be a shop owner renting.
That actually owned something, a parcel, a land, something.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Fine.
Okay.
Let's go with
Okay.
that.
So that person was called the master in the Old Testament. So you would have been an Aved. You just admitted that you would have been an Aved in the Old Testament.
Okay. If that's what they labeled it, fine.
All
That's
right.
no problem.
All right. So you don't have a problem with slavery in the Bible?
Because he didn't buy me. He didn't buy me. Okay. That's different.
Okay. He didn't buy you?
He didn't buy me from someone. I went over and said, hey, you want work done? I can work. That's it.
Okay.
That's a contract.
All right. And that's what was going on in Scripture.
Jesus Christ.
That's what was going on in Scripture. Anything outside of that, other than in certain cases that, like prisoners and things that
your employer buys you in a sense, right?
Right. So that's exactly what was going on in Scripture. That's what was sanctioned in Scripture. What you just described.
Do you think it's immoral to work and employ people?
No.
P. Mars, would you be Matt Dillahunty's slave according to Exodus 21?
Sure.
You would?
He would rape you, P. Mars. He would make you have sex with his horrible trainee girlfriend. You know it.
Oh my! No, please don't. And he would.
And he'd want to watch because of his probably heart palpitations and stuff. That's probably all
that's what they did in those days. What is your point? What are you trying to compare or contrast here? The fact that that's what they established at that point in time in history versus
he has slaves.
What are you trying to argue? That's the way they label things.
Well, my argument would be that the principles and the concepts are similar just more sophisticated today.
No,
Right?
because if a person, was to work off
Yeah.
their debt, work off their debt, it would be 7 years. That's the limit. But a person who is employed today can quit any time or work 20 years.
Whoa! Did you catch that? Did you catch that, guys? If you're gonna compare owing debt, then compare and you switch categories.
They could quit anytime,
okay.
though. That's the
Wait!
thing.
No! Don't let them slip away. Please don't let them slip away from this. Ronan, you compared someone owing debt and then you went to employment. Those are two different categories. Let's stay in the categories if we're going to make a comparison. If you owed debt back then, how did you pay it off?
You worked, but
you
again,
worked for the person that you owed, right? You was forced to work for the person that you owed, right? If you owe debt today, how do you pay it back?
You work.
Are you forced to work?
You go on welfare.
Well, no, not today. I mean,
what about the IRS?
Today you can declare bankruptcy.
Sure, no personal.
It was a welfare system.
All right. So today, how do you pay back money that you owe?
Again, any way you can, or just declare bankruptcy today.
You can declare bankruptcy. Okay, before bankruptcy laws, how would you pay back some money that you owed?
Okay, we're talking in America.
Let's say you get a court. Let's say you get a court order, and the judge says you must pay back this person.
Ronan's
you owe.
a troll.
How do you pay back the person you owe today? How would you pay that back?
You can't answer because you're controlling.
You would work.
You would work. There you go.
Shit.
So why?
But I don't have to work. I don't have to work for the person I owe the money to. That's the difference.
But you could.
I can go find a better paying job elsewhere, pay off the debt, and still.
But you could work for them.
So you're still. So what you've done is you sophisticated the process. That's all you've done. You've added a middleman, sort of. So instead of working directly for the person you owe, you work for McDonald's, and then that McDonald's paycheck goes to the person that you owe, right?
No.
What?
That would be garnishing.
Okay, you don't work for McDonald's. Okay, I'm sorry. You work for Merrill Lynch.
Are you going to just mute me and talk over me in order to make your point, or do you have something of substance to share?
You're a troll with a speech impediment.
Again, I could today. I could go work for someone else for a whole bunch more money, pay off my debt, and still have money. In those days, according to you, I would have to work for the person.
Okay, so the difference is instead of working directly for the person, now you're working for Merrill Lynch. You're making a lot of money, but you're still paying that person the Merrill Lynch paycheck until it's paid in full, the debt that is, right?
Well, yeah. That's
so all you've done was sophisticated the same process or principle. The borrower is slave to the lender. All you did was say, I'm not going to work for you directly. I'm going to work for somebody else and pay you directly.
Well, no, because the Bible says how the master is supposed to treat me, whether I'm
no.
It says the master is supposed to treat the slave.
You're not going to move the goalposts to.
You said slave. You said slave, dude. I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I didn't say slave. You did.
Ronan,
that's not moving goalposts. That's kicking it right between the uprights.
Ronan, don't try to run away.
I'm not running away. You're the one saying things and then trying to be evasive about it.
You put yourself in this.
You said slave. You said slave. That's directly to the person.
Sorry.
And then compare it to today.
Okay, so you owe money. A owns B money. B decides he's going to pay it back by working for A. Are you with me?
In those days.
Okay. In those days. Today, A owes B money. B decides, or A decides he's going to pay it back by working for C, and the money he gets for working for C, he gives to B.
Right.
Which you're saying one is immoral and one is not immoral. Why?
I didn't say it was immoral.
Are both immoral?
No, they're contracts. They're contracts.
So they're contracts in both scenarios.
Huh?
They're contracts in both scenarios. First scenario.
That's what I
Okay.
said.
All right. So you don't have any problem with what the scriptures teach then?
I never said that. I just said that's the way they set it up in those days.
All right. And so there's nothing immoral about how they set up their payments or their debt payment or work, which was
the only thing immoral was the treatment of slaves.
okay. So now let's get into the treatment. You're saying that people were being beaten in today's or in the slavery? The slaves are being beaten back then?
Well, it says so in the Bible. If they don't die within a couple of days, 3 days, it's okay. You can beat them. So, yeah, it's different today. You can't beat a person who's indentured servant nowadays.
Yeah, but there are laws
against the law.
There are laws. Like if my employer at McDonald's beats the shit out of me, there are laws in the book that would say like he has to go to jail and be punished, right?
Yeah.
But does that mean that employees are getting beat at McDonald's by their bosses because there's a law that says that they'll be punished if they do so?
Again, people break the law and get away with it all the time.
Just because there's a law on the books against something doesn't mean it's a common practice, right? For them to do it.
Right. We
so
have.
What the fuck are you talking about? Where are all these beaten slaves? They're not. There's nothing. There's no slaves getting.
It doesn't say you can't beat anyone. Doesn't say you can beat anyone.
It doesn't say if they don't die in a couple of days. They don't. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that if you beat them and they don't die, it's okay. There's nothing in the Bible like that, right?
Let's say that was the case, even though
now you're moving the goalpost. Answer my question.
I didn't even. Let's say that
there's nowhere in the Bible that says if you beat it.
Ronan, I granted you your premise. Shut up. I'm granting you that even though it's false, and if you need some help reading the Bible, praise exegetes this passage very well. Smokey, it's also, well, Smokey will just smoke you, so you better not poke him. Let's say you're right. The master had the authority to beat the slave, right?
No, I'm not right. The book says so.
Okay,
it's not about me being right, please. It's not about me being right.
The book says
that's what that book says.
Okay, the book says the master had the authority basically to beat the slave, right?
Right.
Okay, so for what reason would the master have, or what under what circumstances would he be allowed to beat his slave?
At his whim.
At his whim. All right, you need to demonstrate that.
That's a claim. It didn't say why you beat the slave.
Okay, so if it didn't say, why are you assuming he could beat him arbitrarily?
Because you know people, don't you? So you don't understand.
No,
you don't understand. You don't understand the petty mind of a coward.
I just want to say hello to my homie Ronan Kanushi, or as he goes by Porn Star.
No.
So again, Ronan, you assume, Ronan, that because the text doesn't state, as you admit, you assume that the slave would have been beaten arbitrarily or on a whim, right? Capriciously, I'm just going to beat my slave today because I feel like it. Right?
Well, yeah.
Okay, that's your assumption. You need to demonstrate that in the text instead of just in your head.
So are you saying it doesn't happen? There's no.
I love Ronan Kanushi's cartoon version of slavery. It's really cute, actually.
Toby,
his literal Mickey Mouse, I'm just like Goofy wakes up and beats the hell out of Mickey over a.
So you really think those people in those days actually abided by the law to the letter? And today we just don't care.
Okay, all right.
There's social dynamics. That's what happens in those situations.
Ronan, you don't realize it, but you're moving the goalposts to now proving that the scriptures do not condone, or I shouldn't use condone, sanction. You're moving the goalposts to proving whether or not everyone obeyed the sanctions.
Not everyone obeyed. That's the point I'm making.
Not everyone obeys the laws today. That doesn't mean that the laws themselves are immoral. That doesn't follow.
Well, no, there are immoral laws. You know,
Yeah,
there are.
like abortion.
Don't pay the bank
Slavery,
mortgage.
slavery in
If I don't leave,
America.
they come and arrest my
Slavery in
ass.
America was immoral.
Yeah.
Exclusively America, huh?
Right.
Well,
right.
No, wait, okay. Slavery here in America, when it first started, was based on the Bible. Okay.
Oh my God. So you're telling me that those lovely African gentlemen that sold us a lot of our slaves, they were all Christians?
Oh, Jamie, there's a request. I'm sorry, guys. I gotta. There is a request for one of our candidates for Senate, United States Senate, has a message for us, and Jamie here is requesting that he hears from Louisiana Senate race, folks, is going to be a hot
Every
one.
37 seconds, someone is arrested for possession of marijuana. Since 2010, state and local police have arrested an estimated 7.3 million Americans for violating marijuana laws, over half of all drug arrests. Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana laws than white people. States waste $3.7 billion enforcing marijuana laws every year. Most of the people police are arresting aren't dealers, but rather people with small amounts of pot, just like me. I'm Gary Chambers, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I approve this message.
It's going to be a hot one. It's going to be a close race. That's a real
Republican. I really don't know anymore, to be honest with you. Most Republicans kind of don't give a shit about weed anymore.
That's not from the Babylon Bee, by the way. That's an actual candidate for your United States Senate. I don't even have to tell you what party he's affiliated with.
Well, that's why I asked, because I'm not sure. I've heard Ted Cruz say that, decriminalize weed, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't see him making campaign ads. Only the blacks.
He's got a YouTube channel, dude.
Right.
Final Verdict with Ted Cruz. Literally talks about it all the time.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Ted Cruz. I think he's trying to run against Trump, but he doesn't know how to say it.
He's a rat fuck.
He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to say it or when he should say it, but I think he wants to try.
I tried to say it when I was on with Knock. He was asking me about, who do you think is going to run? And I was trying to get to Ted Cruz, but I never made it that far. But Ted Cruz, I don't trust that motherfucker. I don't trust him.
I don't either. Yeah, he I don't know. But what he said about the January 6th riots, I sort of
see, now he's got you saying it wasn't a fucking riot.
Right. But I'm okay with it if what he meant was the FBI infiltration and the provocateurs and that's what he was talking about. Then okay, I'm okay with it.
Ray Epps is a fucking glowy. I don't care what anyone says. He's a fucking.
Who was Ray Epps? Who was Ray Epps?
He was at a rally the day before.
No, I know who Ray Epps is. I did a video on it. Yeah. I did a video on that.
He's a fucking glowy. He glows in the dark.
And he wasn't the only one there either. He wasn't the only one that was planted at the riot.
Hello, fellow political insurgents. Is there any illegal activity that we're perhaps planning to do today?
Have you seen these Nazi LARPers too trying to infiltrate Patriot Prayer? I forget what they're called. I think they're called something Front. I forget what they're called. But they're trying to spin the narrative and be like, look at all these white supremacists that totally aren't federales. They got shields and shit. It looks so orchestrated. It's like it's like literally like the High School Musical version of like they dressed up like literal like Star Wars stormtroopers, and it's like, oh, come on.
What if I want to have sex before I get married?
Well, I guess you just have to be prepared to die.
Guess you just have to prepare to die, Will.
Oh God. No, I'm actually celebrating my second year of marriage with my wife here on Friday.
Oh wow! Congratulations, 2 years already.
Yeah, kind of flew by.
The honeymoon is over, huh?
Well, I never had one. Do the math. 2 years. That's COVID time.
Oh yeah. You were.
They told us we weren't allowed to get married, and we said, "Fuck
COVID.
you." They did. They
Did
said,
you have to
"No,
wear
you can't get me. No dancing, no music," and we did all that shit at my mom's
Wow.
house. We were like, "Yeah, we're not. Fuck you, Cuomo." Back when he was still a thing. He's trying. I hate that motherfucker too. I hate Dagos. I fucking hate.
You do such a disservice when you lie about things like this.
Ronan, you do such a disservice when you lie.
Well, no, put it this way. You have your truth, I have mine.
Doesn't make any
Oh,
sense.
we've got separate
That
truth
doesn't
now.
make any sense.
There can't be multiple. What is this? The Gospels? Jesus, talking about multiple truths. Well, they're all true at the same time.
Well, I have my views and you have yours. I think that's part of being an individual.
Yeah, you know what the difference is? Your views are wrong and mine are right. That's the difference.
Okay.
See, that's a very important distinction.
Your rules are
Because one of us said something incredibly dumb and the other one didn't.
Okay. Well, what did I say that was dumb?
You literally said that like biblical slavery was basically like evil and abhorrent, and then you were like, well,
I never said it was evil, dude. I never said it was evil. I said that's what they.
Through it,
That's
and then
what
you were
they
like, I
had.
guess it's okay, and that's been my opinion the whole time.
No. Again, that's what they established in those days and times. I never said it was good or bad. I'm saying that's what they established at that point in time.
Later. Don't gaslight me. I was literally like, as soon as Smokey popped over here, I was like, okay, and this is what I was watching, and I listened to you, and I pay attention because I got.
You're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. I never said it was good or bad. I said that's what they established at that point in time in history, and that's what you don't want to look at.
So what are you arguing about then, if not? You're not arguing. You're just here to hear yourself talk.
Where your turn bad is where they carried the concept forward to American history, for example, and they established slavery here based on biblical writings.
Based on a perversion.
Now that's bad.
And I presented to you that the people who sold us slaves were not Christian.
Yeah, that was based on a perversion of scripture, Ronan. Just like someone perverted you, which is the reason why you're the way you are.
You have your perspective. In early American history, they had their perspective, and they based it on the Bible.
Someone perverted.
Let's grant the premise that what you're saying is true. That the people who bought slaves from Africa were Christians, and they used the Bible. Let's just grant that hypothetical. All right, who fucking sold them to the Americans? Who sold them to the British?
They didn't sell. They traded for goods and rifles. The point being,
what would you call an exchange of material wealth for another thing that is a purchase?
May I finish my statement? May I finish my statement? They had tribal warfare there at that time, and obviously those taken in war were traded off for supplies and munitions. Okay, that's the way they did it. Now there was another party who actually shipped them over, and I think
were they Christians?
I think it was Jewish people.
It was Jewish.
Oh my God!
You are so ignorant, Ronan.
Well, yeah, but you don't want to teach me. You don't want to teach me anything. Fine. All you want to do is stupidly insult. That's what you want to do all the time. Is stupidly insult.
Hey, Ronan, can you do us a favor?
Don't get into your little stupid diatribes. Don't get into your little stupid diatribes. Just explain it to me. Man up and explain it to me versus being a petty weakling.
Into revisionist history.
Explain it to me. Don't go off.
I am explaining
editorializing. Don't be
monetary
editorializing. Explain it
or
to me.
physical wealth. What do you think? Okay, so if I trade my car for another car, that is, I can't. I don't. It's like literally it's the same thing. Just because coins were exchanged, that's a purchase.
The Jews sold them. That might make my dumb comment of the week next week.
It might have to. Good Lord,
the
Ronan.
Jews-
It was the Jews what done it. Thanks.
It was the Jews what done it.
You're right. You're absolutely that. No, that
Ronan,
tracks.
So that little exercise, I hope, caused you to realize that the slave trade had nothing to do with the Bible, but or really race or color, but maybe the color green, but not anyone's color or race. It was a trade. It was value involved or profit involved in purchasing people.
It's like
Slave
saying
trafficking.
it's like you. There was the analogy of a car, a used car, trading it off.
Okay.
If I trade off a used car, that person can do anything they want to with that car, much like the slave trade. I sold them. You can do whatever you want here in America with them slaves, whatever you want.
Which was not a principle found in Scripture, so they had to pervert Scripture and science in order to make it seem as though what they was doing was right or just. They perverted science. Would you take that the 19th century, Huxley gradation of races, the blacks on the bottom because we're less evolved, and of course the Caucasoid race? Would you take that as science because it was proposed and it was used as a justification for slavery? Would you take that as actual science today, or you understand that to be a perversion of science?
Would be a perversion.
Okay.
Because they
So
didn't.
do you take the perversion as what the actual science is, or what it actually purports?
Christians perverted it.
No. So you wouldn't do that with the Bible. So why do you do that with the Bible? Because you're an atheist. That's why.
No, because there's a continuum from then to early American history, right? The justification was based on perversion, like you said. I agree with you, but they're still Christians. They're still believing that book and interpreting it
Is
the way
Thomas
they want.
Huxley a scientist?
Who?
Thomas Huxley coined the term agnostic. Is he a scientist?
I don't know. Let me
He's a
look him up.
biologist, right?
Well, I don't know. Hold on.
Right? He's become known as Darwin's bulldog, whatever that means. For he advanced Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Right? He's an anthropologist. He's a biologist. Is he a scientist or a biologist? Is he any of those things? Because he perverted. What about Haeckel? Ernest Haeckel, is he a scientist?
I think so, but it says here Huxley was a biologist and anthropologist.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you know
specifically phrenology?
He was supporting Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. It says here.
Right, and a lot of what he taught led to what I would call racism today. Not what you might call racism. Somebody doesn't hire blacks because or their credit score is too low. That's not racism.
Again, in science, they change over time when obviously the theory is challenged. It changes theory. You cannot change the Bible.
But you can pervert it.
Science realizes where its shortcoming is and adjusts for it over time.
But you can pervert.
Not you, but the Bible doesn't. Pardon?
You can pervert science in the Bible. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about changing anything.
What science is in the Bible, please?
I didn't say science was in the Bible. I said you can pervert concepts and theories, or you can just make them up. Yeah, you can just.
That's not what you said. But again, if you pervert a theory nowadays, science is going to challenge it.
And if you pervert the Bible nowadays, the Bible is going to challenge it.
I didn't pervert the Bible. I was quoting the idea.
No, I didn't accuse you of perverting the Bible, Ronan. Ronan, pay attention. I hope you can follow. You're saying that there were people who perverted science, and then science itself corrected them.
Right.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah.
And that same, along the same logic, lines of reasoning, which it seems like you're trying to do, people have perverted, like Thomas Jefferson, like the LGBTQ today, people have perverted scripture, changed things, omitted certain things to make it seem like it's okay with certain behaviors, but we still have the Bible to refute them. So the Bible doesn't change. People try to change the Bible, but fortunately for everyone, they don't pervert all of the copies. There are still copies.
Well, no, I don't want the Bible perverted. It speaks for itself. It's amoral in these days and times, and obviously I'm quoting it or trying to figure out what it's really saying, but I'm not trying to pervert it. I'm not.
Well, what I'm saying is that the evolutionary racism of Darwin's day was a perversion of science. Now today it's politically incorrect, but there are textbooks, and Ken Hovind does speak on this. And one of the things, the reason why I like him is because he does speak about the textbooks, which no one talks about. There's still biology textbooks that still promotes racism.
Well, yeah. You come to Texas, man. Here they really champion racism here.
No, I'm talking about the recapitulation theory, I think it's called. It's inherently racist. The idea that in the womb, the mother goes through the evolutionary, or all of the stages of the evolutionary development, or the evolutionary process. Even though it's been falsified.
By whom?
Stephen Gould.
Really?
Who basically said it was a racist idea. It was the racism of white scientists, he said.
Oh,
and the idea was that blacks had not gone through basically all of the evolutionary processes, or all of the evolutionary stages, and so we were going premature, basically.
So
the general theory goes something like this. Like if you're looking simply naturalistically at organisms that we had descended from within Darwin's theory of evolution that was expounded on by other scientists, obviously. You start out as a sperm, so like a simple single-celled organism, and then the embryo eventually ends up looking like a fish, and then more like a lizard, then more like an early primate. And this racist evolutionary theory basically says that, like, somewhere between primate and human stages in utero, there's a pause where black people stop and are basically it's utter fucking nonsense. But yes, that's a thing that exists.
Okay, but see, they're not going to keep that idea forever.
It's still in the textbook.
It can change because it will be challenged, and over time, there is resistance from the racists, but the reasonable people are going to see for what it is.
And that's what I'm arguing for the case of the Bible, Ronan. People actually, when the slaves began learning how to read, they didn't know how to read. So of course it was easy for the liberal slave master to pervert the text.
Slave master. Why do you like to use the word?
They were Democrats. They were Democrats in spirit.
Okay. Do you understand the difference between party affiliation and ideology?
Follow me.
Do you understand the difference? Do you understand the difference between party?
I understand the difference. Okay. So the point is,
explain it to me. Explain it to me now.
No, I'm not going to, because that's
yes,
not
you don't know. You don't know, huh? Because the Dixiecrats were conservative here in America.
What were they trying to conserve?
So you.
What were they trying to conserve?
Why are you?
What were they trying to conserve? You said they were conservative. What were they trying to keep?
Their position, their power.
And what exactly did that entail?
Control.
Over who?
Anyone. We're talking slavery here.
Okay, so they were trying to conserve slavery, and they were called conservatives because they wanted to keep the South, right?
That's why they were conservative.
All right. So today we call conservatives those who want to conserve things like our Constitution, things like our monuments, our history. They want to conserve that because they believe it's important. So when we say conservative today, we don't mean trying to conserve slavery, which doesn't exist today. So words do go through phases of evolution. You believe that apes evolved. Why not words? So today, the word conservative means something entirely different.
You just acknowledge evolution
of words.
No, no,
Of
you
words.
said human. You said human, and
I said that's what you believe.
You compared them. You equated them just now.
Okay. All right. So Ronan, back to what I was arguing about science. The science has been perverted. You admit that, and you say that credible science can check that, can put that to rest. Okay, we would argue the same with scripture. Scripture can be perverted, it can be twisted, just like any other thing. But a proper understanding, a proper hermeneutical understanding, proper exegesis of the text, a proper reading of the text would render those interpretations to be frauds or false.
Again,
Right?
You can't change it.
There's
Even though
nothing
it
to
could be
change,
perverted,
Ronan. All we're
even
doing,
if it's perverted, it
there's
cannot
nothing
be
to change. There's nothing to change if originally it did not intend it to communicate the perversion. There shouldn't be anything to change. What we're going to change, well, if someone got a hold of all the Bibles and made these perverted changes, right? Then you could say, well, it changed. The only thing that changed was the people who perverted the text and the people that they taught the perversions to. The text itself does not change. The text itself actually was buried in the sand, free from legendary corruption.
Again,
and then dug up later, which revealed that Thomas Jefferson was a fraud. Right? So we have the archaeological spade, which all we have to we dig up and we find these texts unaltered or uncorrupted, right? Because they perverted only the copies of the text that they had to themselves. They couldn't pervert all of the copies. So just like science has a way to check itself, the word of God has a way to check itself and protect itself from perversions over years, over decades, over centuries. Through the archaeological spade.
It's been real. It's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun. I'm gonna go do. I don't know. I'll probably take a nap. I gotta work later. All right, peace out, guys.
See you. Vote the MAGA. All right, so just like Ronan, we know that science was perverted by Thomas Huxley, Ernest Haeckel, who drew a bunch of fake drawings to try to prove his theory of recapitulation. And we know that also in the same light, the Bible has been perverted to teach things like slaves should obey their masters and things that the Bible would not ever command
Wait a minute.
anyone.
It doesn't say that in the Bible that slaves should obey their masters. Didn't Jesus say that?
No, you should never. No, not in the context in which they were using.
Now you're going with context.
Right.
No. That's moving the goalpost. You're good.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Very good.
No, it's
You're
not
very
moving the
good.
goalpost. Because if I say to you, obey your master, and you wanted to be there with that master, then that would be the right thing to do. Since you chose to work for this person, you need to obey them. It's their home, it's their house, it's their land. You need to obey your master. If I said obey your master in the context of that master kidnapping you and forcing you to work against your will, well, then understandably, that would be immoral because you're not there because you want to be there. So that's where the perversion came. And the scriptures They didn't change anything. All they did was eliminate the context. If you Google biblical or slave Bible, you'll see. Even though this Bible was more in the Caribbeans where they kept their slaves there, they took certain parts of the Bible out. They omitted certain parts of the Bible to make it seem as though this is where you're supposed to be, even though we forced you to be here.
So who
they had
perverted it? Who perverted
the
it?
slave master. Google slave
No,
Bible.
no. Again,
Slave
the
master
slave
perverted. They
master.
omitted. Yes.
No, the slave masters. Okay, it
Of
wasn't
course,
some
yes.
outside. It wasn't some outside viewer or a person who was neutral. It was themselves who perverted the Bible.
That's correct. Excellent.
Okay. So that means they interpreted it to benefit themselves.
They omitted and they were dishonest.
Well, no, they perverted it to benefit themselves. That's what it is. If they
Same-
omitted it
and
because
they
it
did
would
the
be
same
to their
with science.
advantage, if they omitted revelation in order for it to be to their advantage, it is a perversion. Yes, so
Okay.
it's convenient for them.
Exactly. So why do you
Okay.
take that? Why do you take that false interpretation and try to thrust it onto what the Bible actually reveals?
Because the Bible in its original content is antiquated in terms of comparing it to today's morals and behaviors. That's
It's
the difference.
antiquated.
It's
What's wrong with
antiquated. It's an antiquated ideology.
what's wrong with being old? Old doesn't mean immoral.
There's nothing wrong with tradition, but trying to carry the most rigid parts of it forward, that's a problem. In tradition, that's what happens.
Okay, the Slave Bible, as it would be known, is a missionary book. It was originally published in 1807, and it's on behalf of the Society for the Conversion of Negro Slaves. So this was an effort to teach enslaved Africans how to read the Bible, but the passages, the Bible that they gave them only included selected parts of the biblical text. A lot like what atheists do today with Leviticus, a lot like what atheists do today with Exodus 21 and Deuteronomy. So all you're proving, Ronan, and your ilk is that you are on the same level as these people.
I'm not perverting anything if I'm asking questions.
Okay, maybe not you.
Okay, thank you.
But that's a perversion of the text, only reading selected parts. They removed the part where it talked about the Egyptians being freed from slavery. Okay, once we got a hold to that,
where were the Egyptians freed from slavery?
By Moses. Moses
was okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
God freed them. God freed them from slavery using Moses and Aaron, right? You know the story. Let my people go. Okay, once we got a hold of that in the United States and antebellum South, what did we started chanting? Let my people go. So you can't take a perversion of the text and then say, well, that's what the text actually entails, when that same Bible was used to free blacks in the antebellum South. The principles in that same book. So obviously there's something going on here with the understanding of what the text is communicating.
Well, the difference is that Moses left Egypt. American slaves could not leave.
Well, they were taken, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And they tried to take the Israelites back, but God intervened when they tried to recapture.
It's a reinterpretation of an antiquated ideology. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. It just got reinterpreted.
What is antiquated meaning old doesn't mean the principle is not useful.
No, the ideology, antiquated ideology, the principle itself is antiquated. It's old.
The principle is not it's old, but as I demonstrated with the case of owing money, All you've done was sophisticated the process. The principle is still the same. The borrower, people who borrow money, you are slave to the lender. However you decide to pay that back, if you want to sophisticate that process and putting bank, you want to do a bank automatic withdrawal or garnishing your wages instead of working for the person directly in their home, all you've done was sophisticated the process. You haven't changed the principle, and it's not an antiquated principle. It's a principle that is still viable today, as I demonstrate. Sophistication of a principle or process is not the elimination of that principle or process.
Well, we outlawed slavery here in America. That's changing it. That's changing
And
it
they
altogether.
outlawed slavery in the Bible before you.
Again, that's what they believed and practiced at the time. Two different
Slavery
things.
was outlawed in the Bible also.
Where?
Exodus 21:16. You're defining slavery as the Israelites making agreements with other Israelites and also foreigners. You're defining that as slavery because they called them avets, or the same word that was translated into slave. But if you look at what was actually going on, if you describe without even using the word slave or vet, if you just describe what was happening, you would not define it as slavery. You're only defining it as slavery because you see the word slavery in the text.
Well, that's the word.
Right, but if I took the word out and put the word Timbuktu, you would say, oh, that person was a butler or that person was a maid. Because there's nothing in the text that would indicate that that person was being forced. Purchasing, buying, owning, those are all terms that do not necessarily denote being forced.
Okay. Again, that's what they had at the time. However they labeled it, you can define it. Okay, you're right. However, it changed when
What
it came
changed?
here.
What changed?
Because you're trying to justify slavery under a different label in history in the Bible.
Show
Fine,
me what changed.
I agreed with you. It changed when it was implemented in America.
Show me what changed.
Well, in those days, you said just because they call it slave, that could have been indentured servitude to work off a debt. In America, they purchased the person. They didn't kill that person for purchasing or selling the person in America.
Okay.
According to your Exodus, what is
They
it?
purchased them.
21:16.
Okay, did they purchase them against their will or with their
They
consent?
were they were prisoners of war. You know, it already is against their will when they were in Africa. Then they were sold off and transported to America. So they were already being here against their will.
Well, not all of them were prisoners of war. So these people were kidnapped and they were taken to a foreign land. Okay, the punishment if you did that in the Old Testament would have been death.
Okay.
If you went to the Midianites and you purchased someone and took them back to Israel and forced them to come against their will, if you were found with that person that you kidnapped, you would be put to death.
Again, I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I'm saying that's what they had. But when it started here in America, they didn't kill anybody for buying and selling slaves. They killed
Okay, then,
slaves.
so they weren't following scripture.
Again, they perverted it.
Right.
Okay.
I'm glad we agree. I'm glad we can
All right.
agree on that. All right. Now, slaves obey your masters, even the cruel ones, iron charioteer. Yes, you are to obey your employer, even the ones that treat you bad, even the ones that micromanage, like some of my let me not go, but yeah, even the ones that mistreat you, that treat you cruel, or where you are working with vigor or being treated with vigor or hard labor, you still to obey them because you agreed, you made a promise to work for them. Notice the text doesn't say that if someone kidnaps you and forces you to work against your will, you are to obey them. So once again, this is a classic example of what the slave masters did to blacks in the antebellum South. They took passages like this and said, see, told you the Bible says to obey your masters. But if they had left the passages in where it talked about God not wanting people to work against their will and that was against the law of God, had they kept those passages in, they would have been able to read them and contextualize passages with each other. And the antebellum South would have never happened. So unfortunately, we have people like Ian Chartier, probably a white liberal, whose ancestors did exactly what he's doing today with the Bible. Exactly. At least Ronan here, who I'm starting to have a little bit more respect for, can see that there was a perversion of the text, and that slave here is more akin to worker, not someone who God would never condone you going back to someone that abuses you. Even in scripture, even though God hates divorce, scripture does allow, in the cases of abuse of a woman and abandonment, that you separate. Even though that's how much God loves women and children. So even though God hates divorce, he would never never sanction you being abused or in a marriage or a house where you're being abused, whether it be by a slave master or your husband.
But in the Bible, there is control. Like a wife should not speak out in public in the Bible, or but today a woman can.
Can she?
So, well, yeah, to that degree.
As a conservative, she can't speak out. She'll be canceled. She'll lose her job. So there's certain things that you can and cannot say today also.
Again, like I said.
How are you any better? You created cancel culture. How are you any better?
Again, because I pointed out earlier that Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself, and he's speaking to fellow Jews. And same thing with a woman. Pharisees and Sadducees were not Hebrew. They weren't Hebrew. They were not Hebrew. Okay, thank you for correcting me. Sadducees and Pharisees were not Hebrew. That's what you just said. Jesus was talking to them after he silenced one of them. Another person from the other side, a Pharisee, asked the question. So, in context, right there, talking to them directly, what else is he going to say?
Oh, okay, Ronan. All right, so you mentioned that Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor would have been anyone, not just someone who has the same color skin or in the same tribe or ethnic group. Your neighbor would have meant anyone. He even says, love your enemies.
That's different. Okay,
what do you mean that's different?
A distinction. No, that's a distinction right there. You gave me the information.
He said, love your enemies, and he also said, love your neighbors. So where does
Okay. Because,
so that means everyone, doesn't it?
Because right down the road, there could be other tribesmen, and you have to love them too. But that doesn't mean they're my neighbor.
They are your neighbor.
No, because the Bible points out to also love your enemies. That's not a neighbor.
But you're supposed to love both.
Right.
So you're not allowed to treat anyone differently because of where they're from. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemies. Pray for them who despitefully use you.
No, I see it in context where Jesus was talking to those in power, and then Jesus talking about love your enemy as thyself. Right?
Okay. In Leviticus 19, the Israelites were commanded to love the stranger in the land. It says, when a stranger resides in your land, you shall do him no wrong. Were
Right.
the Israelites allowed to do?
Resides. That's a key word there. He's
Okay.
residing. He's also like working within the community. If he's a criminal, obviously they're not going to treat him the same.
All right. So it had nothing to do with where you were from, but your behavior. If you behaved in a certain fashion, you were put in jail. Why can't you say that to the blacks today in America? It has nothing to do with your skin color, but your behavior. If 15% of the population,
because it started with skin color.
it started and it's
and
continuing based on skin color.
Well, yeah.
You have to prove that.
Right. In Texas, we have gerrymandering, right? Where the political party, right, basically gathers up all the votes that would support them, cutting into other minority areas, and just apportioning that out to themselves so they can remain in control. And here in America,
we have gerrymandering from only Democrats or only Republicans gerrymander.
Well, yeah, because that's the way the laws work. That's the way the laws work. They have control for 10 years. That's the way.
Okay. How about putting a bunch of empty ballot boxes that wind up full the night of the election? How about doing that? How about putting that in every Republican district? Did you see Republicans doing something like that? This past election?
Wasn't it Republicans doing that?
Who decided to do that in all of their
Republicans?
No.
In Georgia, if Republicans put extra voting
in Georgia, who got caught printing ballots?
I guess it would be the Democrats the way you're going.
Okay. So these things happen. We know that.
Well,
so gerrymandering and things happening on both sides, not just the Democrats or the Republicans. That's why you need to vote MAGA if you want to save this country.
You're supporting the person, not the law. That's two different things. I can't support MAGA because it's supporting a person.
It's not supporting a person.
Huh?
It's not supporting America. It's supporting America, not a person.
No, because
do you support America?
Who is the figurehead of MAGA?
We the people.
You're lying now. You know good and well it's President Trump or former president.
President Trump. Yeah, thank you for predicting the future. You are a prophet.
That's
you are a prophet.
No, but see, that's a person, not the law. That's where I have issue because you're supporting a person, and that's not our law. If I'll tell you what, if MAGA gets voted in and they control Congress, and they change the law, fine, no problem.
If we go back to when Trump, if everything goes back to where Trump had it before Biden came on the scene, I think you'd be happy.
No, we had far more problems.
Wow. I'm not even gonna get into that because that's not the topic on my stream.
Okay.
Come see me next week where I'm going to be talking about the children of Belial, or the children of Satan, which are people who you vote for and support, unfortunately. And then we can talk all about your party, the party of racism, the party of slavery, Jim Crow, abortion, euthanasia. What else? Did I forget something? Antifa, Black Lives Matter.
No, please. Let's go on with this. We can pick it up next week.
George Floyd statues. Yeah, we could talk about your party next week. Okay. But I'm getting ready to shut the stream down. Thanks for joining me, Ronan. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right. And I'll see you next week. I'll be live at 12, of course, as usual, the usual time.
Okay. So it would be 11 your time because, like I said, my mistake.
11.
Yeah. Okay. Your time. Okay. Fine. I got it. Thank you.
I like to spend the first half hour or so just ranting anyway. So it's good that you joined me an hour into the show.
Hey, you got a bot. That
I know.
I don't know what happened.
Gonna get rid of him.
Okay.
So I want to take care of it. I have some wrenches.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Ronan. I'll see you next time. Okay.
Take care.
See ya. All right. The women slave will not go out like the male slaves do. Yeah, it's because women are the weaker vessel, and men were allowed to go out because they could fend for themselves. Women, and this tradition still is was the case in America up until maybe the 50s, perhaps, unfortunately, where women were not allowed out of the home, right? The male could go off and find a job, start his own family. She was not to go out until she was married. Okay. And that's not to hold the woman down, but it was designed to, the idea was to protect her from 3 babies out of wedlock and still not married, which is what unfortunately we have today, because we've foregone that biblical principle. So it was designed to protect the woman, because it wasn't safe for a woman to be roaming around looking for work, going from city to city or town to town, like a man could do in those days. Okay, I hope you understand, Iron. I hope you do want to protect women and children, as the Bible clearly was trying to do in those times, where it would have been a disaster if a woman had to fend for herself in the ancient Near East. You probably would be relegated to the outskirts of the town, and prostitution would be your job, or how you survived, if you weren't married. Okay, so she may not go out. No. So you can jump on your feminism, your feminist, feminazi, jump on that bandwagon if you will. Once that is explained, that just quickly dissolves the gaslighting. Oh, look, the women couldn't go out. Oh, women couldn't be construction workers. Look, 97% of construction workers are men. I guess that means that it wasn't safe for women to do those types of jobs. So America is not a sexist nation because 99% of people digging holes in cement are men. It's designed, it's because our society, at least up until recent times, wanted to protect women, the weaker vessel, from overstraining their bodies. Having children is enough strain on the woman's body. Now you're going to stick a jackhammer in her hand? My God, these people hate women and children. Woke pastor of the week. There's power in the name.
But I'm gonna say this. You know I'm gonna say it. I've been telling you for 2 years now, no, a year, to get vaccinated. I've got friends who wouldn't get vaccinated. They're not here now. There is power in the name of. And all the folks who say they trust in the Lord, no, you're not. No, you're not. When the Lord sends deliverance, the next move is obedience. No. Okay, I'm gonna help y'all. Say it with me. Say, when the Lord sends deliverance, the next step is obedience, not prayer.
Not prayer.
You don't go on a 4-day fast. What this has taught me is that we need probably to help people to walk in genuine faith.
We need to help people walk in genuine faith. Woke pastor of the week. Woke pastor of the week. We need people to walk in genuine or real faith. So you're not walking in real faith unless you get the jab. There is power in the name. You're not walking in real faith, Veckel. You're not walking in real faith, basement dweller. You're not walking in real faith. Jill only eats Granny Smith apples. I cannot stand Granny Smith apples. Red Delicious apples are the only real apples. They were demon rats, KKK in spirit. Yes, I don't care what label you try to put on them, or try to give me a classical definition of liberalism, or what liberalism actually means, and then try to suggest that you're a liberal because of what the literal definition of liberal. Come on, man. You think I'm that stupid to fall for something like that? Do you think all of humanity or all of Christianity at least is that dumb? Words are not univocal. Just like with your stupid Antifa groups, you can define yourself as anti-fascist, and in all actuality, based on your behavior, you're a fascist. So labeling your group something to make it sound as though what you're doing is liberal or just doesn't make you liberal or just. If you're killing children, well, what are you trying to liberalize? What are you trying to liberate? Killing more children? Or I'm getting gays liberated. I'm liberating gays. Liberating them to do what? Spread more diseases? So you could tell me you're a liberal, but what are you liberating? You can tell me you're a conservative, but what is it that you're trying to conserve or keep? And we would say that the demon rats are trying to conserve slavery still to this day. So they are the same spirit of the conservatives back then. We would say that the conservatives today, what we would call conservatives today, are trying to conserve liberty and the Constitution, the exact opposite of what the conservatives were trying to do or conserve then. Beta male comment of the week. Another atheist who's just so afraid of me. What is it that why are atheists so afraid of me? They're afraid of God too. Watch this.
If there was a God, there'd be a lightning strike in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay.
She meant to say, Beta male comment of the week. Beta male comment of the week comes from another atheist who just loves the chat, loves my chat.
Because you have the mindset and nature of a woman. As a beta male, not an alpha male. Beta male, yes. Beta male, you're a beta male. You're a beta male, not an alpha male. Beta, what a shame. Mommy's boy, as a beta.
Mommy's boy. Here's another mommy's boy. Now this one is another one that claims to be in the army, but won't fight me intellectually to save his life or his family. The avenging hand of light. Now he went. Now the avenging hand of light. He has his video on me. It's his only video on his channel. This is his only video on his channel, and it's about me. Oh wow, I feel honored. But I don't know if you could read that, but he says, so why does a tough alpha big boy? Let me read it the way he would sound. So why does a tough alpha big boy Fundy hide his comments, block folks, and lie about them behind their backs on other channels? Maybe it's because someone loves to run their ignorant, uninformed. ... All right, so now, by the way, this man who I challenged to come on this channel every week claims that he can't do so, but I'm the one who is hiding comments. Now, he also erased his comments. He erased his comments. All of his comments are erased. I don't know how he did it, but he went on all of my streams and he erased every single comment. So, hiding comments, no, YouTube does that. YouTube cancel culture that you created, that you're now whining about because now it's affecting you and now you want to try to do something, it's too late. So you then complain about something you created in cancel culture. You support it only when it's canceling conservatives. Now it's canceling you in your comments. Now you want to complain. Then he goes and he hides all his comments. So he's complaining about someone hiding his comments, then he hides all his comments. Not an alpha male. Beta. Speaking of beta.
What you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Sheriff and Brown come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
I won't budge on the female moderator when it comes to debate. Carlton. Coward of the week, coward of the year, coward of the century. Also, honorary mention, I guess, also beta male comment of the week comes from Carlton. Bad boys, what you gonna do when Jill comes to debate you? Doom, doom. Show up for what? Rebuke and reprove. Now, just like the rest of these beta male liberals, I invited him to talk. Ronan, although he says some kind of weird things, at least he clicked on the link. You got to give shout out to Ronan for trying, or at least coming in to challenge me on what I say instead of just typing away in the chat or going on other channels and watching review videos, which is what Jay Pasek is probably doing right now as we speak. Okay, shout out to Ronan, shout out to Kiki, atheists that at least show that they have some sort of fortitude, that they can at least defend what it is that they believe, or at least try at least. This beta male, remember, this is the one that after requiring me to write an essay on my beliefs about abortion, then suggested, once he saw that I was willing to do that, he then threw another requirement, which said that he must have a female mod to debate, knowing full well that Jill is not going to be moderated by a woman. Okay, she's called woman because she was taken out of man. So that moderator had already been taken out of me. You're not putting it back in. Rebuke and reprove. Show up for what? Show up for debate like a man. Like the man that you should have been raised to be. Instead of sending me a bunch of comments in my comment section. You haven't come up with a specific topic or anything worth actually talking about. Well, that's their way of saying that they can't defeat your argument. They'll just pawn it off as it's not important. You're not worth talking to. Well, if I'm not worth talking to, why did you proceed to leave 50 comments in my inbox? So obviously you want to talk and you want to try to refute what I'm saying, but you want to try to do it in a way in which you can't be cross-examined, in which you can't be embarrassed or ridiculed. So it's a safe way to communicate. I understand that. I understand that. I used to be like you, and then the Holy Ghost entered in and took over and said, no, we can't be beta anymore, Joe. You're an alpha. You were made in the image of God. You were filled with the Holy Spirit. And what did God say to Moses? Moses said, God, you know I have a stuttering problem. What did God say? Okay, take Aaron. It's no excuse. We're men. You take Aaron with you and he'll speak for you. God didn't allow Moses to make the excuse of his impediment, his speech impediment, because he's a man. So he says, okay, you take Aaron with you and tell that stinking feet Pharaoh to let my people go. And that's what he did. You've already mentioned you have no interest in my assessment of things. I had no interest in you typing your assessment of things. But I do have interest in you coming on here and providing your assessment so that I can destroy it and have it on tape for future audiences to see, so I can archive it and say, remember that time when you made that same stupid argument, and now here we are 6 months later and you're on someone else's channel making that same argument again. Watch this video where I defeated this argument 6 months ago, but your pride wouldn't allow you to accept correction. So now you're here repeating that same defeated argument to some unsuspecting Christian on another channel. And the atheists love to do this. This is why you must get these things recorded on video. And that's why they're afraid of public debates, because they want to go to God and say, this question was never answered. This problem was never solved. This so-called contradiction was never answered by any Christian on your planet called Earth. And they think God is going to say, you know what? You're right about that. But now, if they come on Jill's channel, if they go on Smokey's channel or Veckel's channel or Praise's channel, shout out to the rest of the community. If they go on their channel and they get refuted, now they will not have anything to place. Now, first of all, you think God's going to allow you to tarry. The Bible says a liar won't tarry in his sight. So you probably won't get this opportunity, but I'm just saying. They think they're going to have something to bring to God to say, this is why I didn't believe. This is why they're afraid to debate. They only want to debate people who they think will confirm their atheism, will justify their atheism. So they'll go after Christians who aren't ready to answer, and then they'll say, you see, that's why I'm an atheist. Or they'll go after Christians who aren't interested in answering, and they'll see, well, that's why I'm an atheist, because you just have faith. You really don't have faith in evidence. You just believe what you believe. So what's wrong with what I believe? So they as the scripture says, they heap to themselves teachers who will say what they want to hear, what their itching ears want to hear. You mentioned my name as if you and asked where I am. Yeah, I did ask where you were. It was an open hangout. I was in there, even though I'll probably be muted and put backstage and treated like a Christian. I still wanted you to come in and provide your argument so that I can refute it once and for all, instead of going back and forth in these chain emails. If I want to write to a black man, I'll just write to Rikers Island. You mentioned my name and ask where I am, but you never seem to come up with something definitive to talk about. So now here's another excuse. Joe is not being exactly, what does he want to talk about exactly? Should abortion be legal? I say yes. What say you? Should abortion be legal in the United States? I say yes. Is homosexuality healthy, normal, or natural? Modern day James is not taking that debate. James is not taking that debate. I can guarantee you he is not going to host that debate title. Is homosexuality normal, natural, or healthy? I don't know how more specific I can get. And by natural, I don't mean found in nature. No doctor on the planet is going to say, oh, that poison ivy is okay because it's found in nature. Okay, by natural, we mean another use of the word. If you look up the word, there's two definitions, not one. Some have three. But another usage, which a physician might use, is, does it correspond to your nature, or does it harm it? Or is it no effect, of ill effect? Ill effect, no effect, or a positive effect, right? That's what when doctors say that's unhealthy or unnatural, they're not talking about found in nature. Okay. All right. So that's what I mean by healthy. So is homosexuality, that's my sodomy challenge, normal, natural, and healthy? You can find one physician that would suggest such. I will leave you to. That's my Saudi challenge. Then again, so that sounds definitive to me. Then again, but instead he wants me to write an entire 3 paragraphs on what I mean by that. Then again, you aren't really interested in having a productive conversation. Another cop out. You don't want to have a real conversation. You don't want to have a real conversation. That sounds familiar. You don't want to have a real conversation. That's what liberals say when they don't want to have a conversation, or when they don't want to talk about certain things or certain topics. Well, this isn't a real conversation. So I'm going to go to back to my echo chamber where we can have real
blah 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 blah.
Where we can do more of that, more blah blabbing. All right, it's not a real conversation. Sergeant Slim Jim, let me answer this really quickly because I have to get out of here. He says I don't understand why you keep bringing up the Geneva Convention. Okay, I hope it's clear now, because if you are going to go to war, if every time a Christian brings up slavery in the Bible, and you go to Geneva, Deuteronomy 20, you're being disingenuous. And then you say, well, look, today we don't do that. We don't capture people. Now, Slim Jim wanted to strain at a gnat on the word capture. Well, we technically don't capture survivors of war. Really? Okay, let me get this straight. My village is burning down, and I got some man, a white man, waving his rifle at me, telling me to get into the transport vehicle. Sure, I'm not bound because I'm not a threat, so I'm not in handcuffs or I'm not zip tied. Okay? He wants to say that that's not being captured. Come on, Slim Jim. Come on, you're smarter than that. You're smarter than that, Slim Jim. So the idea was, whether you want to call it being captured or rounding up, the idea was you were to round up the people, the survivors, including non-enemy combatants, in order to remove them from the battle zone. Okay. So the point is the reason why I bring up Geneva, and I'm going to keep bringing it up, is because you went to war. If you're going to go to the context of war in Scripture, if I ask you about was biblical slavery sanctioned, and you say, look at that passage where it talks about going to war, then in response, I'm going to say, well, what about when your country went to war? And what do the laws say when your country engages in warfare, and how you should treat people, what's allowed, what's not allowed? Is it allowed to capture? Are you allowed to round up survivors? Again, you don't have to use the word captured there, because that's not what the text says. It doesn't say capture, but technically you're capturing them. So if you're going to go to war and point to situations of war in Scripture, I can go to the laws when it comes to war in the Bible or in Geneva. Okay, that's why I point to Geneva. Not to say that there's a one-to-one correspondence between Geneva and the wars or the rules for warfare in the Bible, but that the principle of capturing, gathering, rounding up was exactly the same. It was designed to protect, not exploit. So you're not trying to exploit these people and take advantage of them, but the goal was to protect them from the elements, and also from roaming bands of barbarians that would feast on scenarios like this, situations like this, where the men have been killed and there was nothing but women and children left. Those women would have been kidnapped and forced into slavery and sex slavery, etc. So the goal was to protect them. But when the atheist reads this text, he will assume that exploitation was the reason for the capturing or the reason for the booty. The Bible calls it booty, taking captives. They'll assume that it's to exploit them, to take advantage of them. Okay, what does this have anything to do with the laws of keeping Hebrew slaves or regarding Hebrews keeping slaves? It has everything to do with the laws, because if the laws are in respects to a POW camp, or then you have to compare that to the laws in respects to how we would handle prisoners of war. You can't compare the Bible's prisoners of war to how we would treat a citizen today and say, look, and suggest that that's how a citizen would have been taught, treated, or how a someone who did not commit any crime would have been treated. It's like reading someone's manual. Let's say you go to jail and you get a manual, right? And in that manual, it tells you what you can and cannot do. It's like taking that manual and comparing it to a manual you would get for your job, right? And trying to compare the two and say, see, look, this person here is this system here is more moral, of course, because one has to do with prisoners where you don't have much rights, if any rights at all, and one has to do with willing workers, people who go to work because they want to be there. Maybe economic circumstances force them to be there, but they're not forced to be there. So that's not honest. That's not honest. So that's why I go to Deuteronomy. Or when they go to Deuteronomy 20, I go to Geneva 4, Article 16. If you're going to go to when you go to war in our Bible, we're going to go to when you go to war in your Bible. Not your Bible, but your Bible's Google, by the way. So I hope this is the last time I have to explain this to Slim Jim. And then my answer, and then here's his response. Now, I basically gave my answer, the same answer it took me 20 minutes to give you here. I gave it to him in a few sentences. If you're going to compare the behavior of Israelite people during war and critique the laws they had which regulate conduct during armed conflict, it's only fair to compare that code to the code that we hold today, which regulates conduct during armed conflicts. Simple logic. Here's his response. Well, I'm not an atheist, Joe. Okay. Could have fooled me. You sure argue like one. Warfare today is not the same as warfare in the ancient world. Whoever said that was the case. You claim you're not an atheist, but you're arguing like one. Warfare today is not the same as war. Did I say that? Did I say that warfare today is the same as warfare back then? Of course not. Back then it was up close and personal. Now we can probably take out an entire platoon, but pushing a button. We take out a few hundred men. So no, warfare is not the same as it was back then, and I never claimed that to be the case. You say you're not an atheist, but you sure argue like one. Where did I claim that warfare is the same? Well, he doesn't have a response to me that would make any sense, so he's just filling in the blanks to say something. He just wanted to respond. That's basically what I took from this. He didn't have a response, a valid one, so here he's just going to respond and say anything. A factoid, something that we all know to be true, but it's meant to distract you, or red herring, instead of actually answering to my response. I bring up warfare because that's the primary means in which ancient cultures would obtain new slaves. Also another factoid. Also another irrelevant factoid. What does that have to do with my response? My response was I bring up Geneva because the atheist brings up the Bible's quote unquote Geneva. If you're going to bring up the Bible's Geneva, rules for warfare, then I'm going to bring up your Geneva, your rules for warfare, and then make my comparison. And then determine which group, ethnic group, was immoral in their deportment or behavior. I'm not going to compare civil or peacetime rules. You couldn't walk down the street and get snatched up by someone and sold into slavery, and that would have been sanctioned in today's world or then. But yet, when it comes to the Bible, they want to take instances of war and compare and suggest that that would have been happening, that would have happened in peacetime or civil. In the case of a civil case, that would have been something that would have been sanctioned. That's just ridiculous. It's disingenuous. It's dishonest. And it's beneath the Christian to use such tactics during debate. I don't believe you were in the military or Christian. I do believe you were a cop because you look like one of those racist cops. You shouldn't shave your head. Bald cops are the more aggressive cops. Okay, and Slim Jim is a bald cop with those big Oakley sunglasses on. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The one from that video back in the day with F the Police with NWA. I bring up warfare because that's the primary means in which ancient cultures would obtain new slaves. Okay. Okay. Comma, losers were enslaved by the victors because their culture, religion, and society were obliterated. Okay. I don't know if you're referring to the citizens or if you're referring to the enemy combatants. But if, let's say you're referring to the citizens, all right, and Matt Dillahunty loves to do this also. Could the Bible would just call them a vassal state, meaning they were subservient. They would maybe pay taxes, and the government basically that won the war would become the Caesarean, I think it's called. They're called contracts or treaties, and you would basically be like the government, the winning country. If you go read David and Goliath, it's the same concept. If you lose, your people are going to serve me. If I am triumphant, if you are triumphant or you win, our people will serve you. Goliath literally said that because that was understood. Goliath said that, or he was sure he was going to win, right? So that was the case back then, and we don't have a problem with that. Why? Because we see the same principle or concept taught today, or practiced today, rather, only more sophisticated. When you lose a war, your country pays. Your country has to pay for the war. Now, they don't do this anymore, according to Kiki, because of Hitler. So Hitler was upset because of the Versailles Treaty, and many say, I think he even writes in Mein Kampf that that's why he began the Third Reich, or began his quest to restore Germany's dignity and their honor and their sovereignty, because it had been stripped and taken away, and they were technically slaves of the Allied powers. So they were blamed for the war. They lost territory. They were not allowed to build their military up to a certain point, or they had to stop at a certain point, and they had to pay. So who do you think paid reparations? Who do you think was working to pay off this debt? It was the people themselves, not just the government. Even though it was the government's fault, they were killed in war tribunals, right? War crime tribunals. They were killed. So it was the people. Many of them, some of them were spared and brought to America to work on things like the atomic bomb, and but many of them were killed, and some you might consider them to be slaves too. And some were brought to the States, and now you work for the United States government. Did they have a choice in the matter? Probably not. Too bad. You lost. So your country lost. Did these people go into their factories and working every day and being taxed by the government, and that tax was going to the Allied powers? Were they slaves? Were they slaves? Well, so when you're dealing with war and treaties, you can't play that game of, oh, this person is a slave, this person is not a slave. The rules are different when you're engaging other countries in warfare. All right, war is not a something that is pretty. It's not cupcakes and roses and lilies. Okay, war is messy. War is ugly. That's always been the case. That's always been the case. Um, you evacuate the wounded, the sick, the infirm. Again, that's not to exploit them. That's not to exploit them. That's to make sure that no one else exploits them. Why couldn't that have been the case in the case of the Israelites? Why are they the ones who must have been doing this capturing in order to rape and to sell the children into slavery, sex slavery? First of all, the text says marriage. I don't understand where you get sex slavery from if they're being married. Oh well, no, it's slavery because they had the power, and because they had power over them, um, they really didn't want to be there. They really wanted to be with their husbands who were killed in the battle. But because you came in and you killed them, their men, um, they were technically sex slaves, even though they wanted to be married. Shut up, liberal. Sons of Belial next week. And I said I was going to end the stream, and I wound up talking for another hour. Next week, Sons of Belial. Who are the Sons of Belial today? We know who the Sons of Belial were in the Old Testament. The Bible talks about the Sons of Belial. Certain men, the children of Belial, have gone out from among you and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their city, saying, let us go serve other gods, which we have not yet known. So the children of Belial today are doing exactly the same thing. That's how we determine who the children of Belial are, not by any label or title. But are they doing just that? Are they going and not only serving other gods, but they're trying to get you to go serve other gods, which we have not yet known. Those are the sons of Belial today. So we're going to be talking about the sons of Belial and next week. And then I want to do another video on Tyre and the destruction of Tyre. Nebuchadnezzar, Alexander the Great fulfilled Ezekiel 26. So we're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks, not 1, but 2 weeks. Open rebuke is better than secret love. Repent or die, liberal.